Chapter 12:30. That's enough, the two of you. After watching for a while, Fong Bujue spoke to stop the quarrel between the two Tsukamoto. Let's stop the monkey show. The two were obedient. They stopped and turned to look at Brother Jew. From the perspective of the game, the reaction of these two NPCs was reasonable. They were waiting for the player with the key item to make the final choice. This kind of argument is like two shrews shouting at each other in the street. It won't lead to any results no matter how long it lasts. Fong Bujue said, because you have been refuting each other for a long time, but there is no substantive content. So, it's better if I demonstrate it. At this point, he paused for 2 seconds and looked at Tsukamoto in illusory yang. Take the information you provided as an example. There are a few things that don't make sense logically. For example, you said that it was your master's lifelong wish to destroy it, and that he still cared about it until his death. Oh, then I'm curious. After meeting it, and before your master died, in the past 20 years, why didn't your master find other onmyoges to help him deal with it? Don't tell me you are the only Inyang Liao left in Japan. Ancient Japanese government, similar to the Directorate of Heaven in ancient China. The earliest record of Inyang Liao can be traced back to 675 AD, and it was abolished in the 3rd year of Meiji, or 1870. The Inyang Liao that Brother Jew is referring to refers to those Inyang Liao organizations that still refer to themselves as Inyang Liao after the 20th century and are similar to martial arts sections. Earlier, you said that we should find a powerful Inyang master after we escape from this place. After that, Fong Bujue turned to face Tsukamoto in illusory yang. And your story about the government brainwashing children is believable, but the rest of your story has the same problem as your twin brother. At this point, Brother Jew opened his arms. If what you said is true, why didn't you find 4 or 5 other onmyoges to deal with it in those 6 years? If it were me, I would be able to do this twice in 6 days. At this point, the two Tsukamoto's expression changed. But according to the plot, the choice was still in the player's hands. So, after all that, the calmer Tsukamoto spoke again. Who do you plan to believe? This question was like an ultimatum. At this point, Brother Jew had to make a decision. Either he chose one of the two Tsukamoto, or he had to bring the plot to the hidden truth, or else he might trigger the worst possible ending. I believe both of them. 2 seconds later, Fong Bujue gave his answer. At the same time, I don't believe either of them. What do you mean by that? The weakened Tsukamoto asked. The information given by the two of you is not completely fake, Fong Bujue said, but there are some lies mixed in. Hey, then which one of them is real and which one is fake? Phantom Dawn could not help but ask. Huh, Fong Bujue chuckled. He did not answer the question directly, but continued. After combining the stories given by the two and analyzing the illogical parts and the content that was created to lead us into action, I have roughly reconstructed the real story. He started to pace around the room like a detective in a detective show, and he was enjoying himself. The two Tsukamoto's description of the 520 tragedy is not wrong. In fact, it is basically the same. Fong Bujue said, but on one question, both of them lied, and that is 26 years ago, the seal created by Master Nara, was it really not strong enough? When he said that, the two Tsukamoto's expressions were filled with confusion. I don't think that's possible. Fong Bujue studied their expressions and continued with a smile. No matter how you look at it, it is impossible. Even if Master Nara himself could accept it, the relevant department that invited him would not accept it. Therefore, I can be sure that the seal from 26 years ago is very strong. It might even be stronger than the original seal of Mon Shrine. After half a second, Brother Jew continued. Then, here and now, why are we trapped here by it? He quickly came up with an answer. Obviously, there's a key person behind this, Watanabe. Fong Bujue paced for a few more steps before turning to face his teammates. Everyone should still remember the hidden mission, right? Now that you mention it, of course. Ruo Yu said in a mocking tone. Huh. Brother Jew smiled at her and said, for the time being, I will help everyone run through all the people in the group picture of Year 2 Class A. He raised one hand and counted with his fingers. First, The four adults, the principal, Miyamoto, hanged herself at home. The homeroom teacher, Sato, lost his mind. The biology teacher and music teacher, whose names we still don't know, both died in the 520 tragedy, and their souls are still lingering in this space. Then he raised another hand. Let's talk about the 9 children. Suzuki Takayuki died in the fire and turned into a baleful ghost. And the baleful ghost Suzuki was killed by it again. Noguchi Eiji died because of Suzuki's ghost, and his soul is also trapped here. As for Momo, Minamoto, Sasuda, Yuto Sengoku, and Yamada, that's the 6 of us. At this point, Fong Bujua put down his hand. You see the problem now, right? To complete the hidden mission, there's only one goal left, and that is to find out what happened to the class monitor, Watanabe. Speaking of that, Phantom Dawn said, could Watanabe be the ghost that we first met, the one who turned into black smoke at the second-floor staircase and dropped the equipment? Fong Bujua heard that and asked in return, what do you think? How would I know? Phantom Dawn said, the group photo did not state the names of the children. I cannot even tell which child is Watanabe, so how am I supposed to tell who he looks like? Furthermore, it is not impossible for his appearance to change drastically after he grows up, right? Fine. Looks like you have a clear mind. Fong Bujua smiled. Based on his tone, this question was purely to test Phantom Dawn. As he expected, the next second, Brother Ju added, I can tell you for sure that the ghost is not Watanabe. He is one of the victims of that tragedy, similar to the people who reached out their arms from the lockers. You can tell that? Phantom Dawn asked. Yes, Fong Bujua replied. In the fantasy of Yang, I have confirmed the identity of every child in the group photo, and I have memorized the faces of most of the victims who were relatively intact. Therefore, I can confirm that the childhood Watanabe is not the same person as the ghost. Then, at that moment, Inuachin was reminded of something, and her eyes involuntarily wandered to the 2 yin-yang masters. Could he be? Not exactly. Fong Bujua shook his head to deny Inuachin's assumption. There is no doubt about the identity of these 2. They are Shoyuta Tsukamoto. This yin-yang master does exist, but he's been killed by it a long time ago. Since Brother Ju had mentioned key terms like mission earlier, the content that the 2 Tsukamoto heard had been processed by the system, and they did not have the chance to say anything. However, at that moment, the 2 of them appeared to have come online again, and they expressed their dissatisfaction with Brother Ju's words. What nonsense are you talking about? Do I need you to tell me about my own life and death? Both of them were confident, and there was no trace of them acting at all. Look, the real scam is here. Fong Bujua ignored them and turned to his teammates. Both of them think that they are real, and they think that they are telling the truth. What do you mean by that? The Tsukamoto seemed to have caught on to something and asked. It's very simple, Fong Bujua replied. We are not the ones with errors in our memories, but... He looked at the 2 Tsukamoto. You too. Both the weak Tsukamoto and the Tsukamoto were shocked when they heard this conclusion. Although I haven't known you for long, as someone who has studied a lot of psychology books, he had read some when he was a child, trying to analyze whether he was crazy, and later out of interest, he did some non-systematic study. I quickly discovered that there is something wrong with both of you. Fong Bujua said, in my opinion, you are 2 parts of the same personality. You have been separated by it, and your memories have been distorted to do what you think is right. Impossible. This time, the 2 Tsukamoto said the same thing in unison. Oh, you don't believe me, do you? Fong Bujua continued. Let me give you a test, and you'll understand. After that, he immediately looked at the weak Tsukamoto. Other than your parents, name any of your relatives. Before they could answer, he looked at the calm Tsukamoto. As for you, what did you have for breakfast today? After he finished speaking, there was a full 30 seconds of silence. See, it's very easy to do a test. Fong Bujua said, in short, your memories have no details because it can't do that. At this time, the 2 Tsukamoto's expressions became very strange, and they both held their foreheads with their hands, as if they suddenly had a headache. Then, let's go back to the previous question. Fong Bujua continued slowly. How do we get to this point? He asked and answered his own question. The answer lies with Watanabe. Whoosh! Just as Brother Ju said the two words, Watanabe, the red light bulb on the ceiling suddenly went out. Pa! In less than a second, Fong Bujue very calmly and decisively turned on the flashlight that he was holding. After another 2 seconds, his teammates turned on their flashlights one after another. At this point, they did not care about the battery anymore, because the scenario was coming to an end. Air! Those two, where have they gone? After the light was restored, Xiao Tan was the first to share this with Chungu. The others naturally noticed as well. At that moment, the two Tsukamotos had disappeared, and in the dim room, only the 6 players were left. Look, there's something there. Xiao Ling was the sharpest. She immediately noticed a small piece of glowing shard where one of the Tsukamoto had stood. There's one here as well. Ruoyu reacted quickly. She immediately turned the flashlight to the spot where the other Tsukamoto had stood, and she noticed there was another shard there. 5 seconds later, Fong Bujue very quickly picked up the 2 shards and showed them to his teammates. The descriptions of the 2 items were the same. Item name, its kidney item type, plot item quality, normal function, can be embedded into its body, can be taken out of the scenario. No remark, a pocket-sized organ made from green jade. It exudes a faint trace of spirit. Humph! Brother Ju placed the 2 pieces of jade into his pocket and scoffed. Then he turned to his teammates and said, "Come on, let's go downstairs." No one asked any questions. They just followed Brother Ju silently out of the storeroom and down the stairs to the first-floor corridor. Just as they prepared to move toward the exit door, they realized there was already a figure waiting in the middle of the corridor. It was a man with a pale face. He looked to be in his 30s, and he had a parted hairstyle. He was wearing a normal t-shirt and pants, and he was holding a wooden doll in front of his chest. "Do you want to die that badly? Traveler from another dimension." The voice came directly from the man's chest, and it was a hoarse female voice. Let me think. Fong Bujue pretended to read. 1 is to expose the truth at the risk of death. He paused. The other is to pretend to have been tricked by you and make an innocuous choice, and then leave this place with a false victory. It's so hard to choose. Brother Ju's tone was filled with mockery and arrogance. For you, what is the difference between the two? The voice replied, even if this world is completely destroyed after you leave, it won't affect you in any way, right? It sounded agitated. Or, just to stand in my way, you would rather let all the effort that you and your teammates have put in so far go down the drain? Don't flatter yourself. Fong Bujue narrowed his eyes and replied weakly, I'm not interested in standing in your way. I'm just acting according to my own principles and interests. If you want to say that I'm standing in your way, then you're the one who's standing in my way. You'll regret it. The voice became cold and violent. You don't know who you're dealing with. Ha! Ha ha ha! Brother Ju laughed hysterically. I don't know who I'm dealing with, ha ha. He laughed so hard that he could barely speak. After a full half a minute, Fong Bujue suppressed his laughter and took a step forward. As he approached the voice, he said, I don't know what you're thinking, but I'm very sure that the person who doesn't know who he's dealing with is you. At this point, his eyes flashed with excitement. But don't worry, I'll introduce you to me. Chapter 12:31. Oh, facing the approaching Fong Bujue, it was surprisingly calm. I wish to ask, who are you? Don't. At that moment, before Brother Ju could say anything, his 5 teammates shouted the same word in unison. But it was already too late. Fong Bujue stood before the man and said, Since you have asked so shamelessly, I will answer you with all my heart, sigh. Xiao Tan sighed. Phew. Ruoyu sighed. God. And Yueqin rolled her eyes. Xiao Ling narrowed her eyes and sighed. Beep. Phantom Dawn mumbled something, but it was blocked by the system. But if I had to guess, I believe he was mumbling something along the lines of F***CK. In any case, in the next 3 minutes, Fong Bujue did not even need to breathe heavily as he gave it Duan Guan Ko. Brother Ju's poems were constantly changing, from the opening poem of a stand-up comedy, to the selection of a story, to the selection of a Peking opera, to the selection of a pine tree on top of Mount Tai, and the few poems that he had come up with himself and that were widely circulated in the main universe. Finally, he ended it with a standard poem announcing his real name. After all, it sounded the same as his in-game name. Throughout the whole process, the expression of it, or rather, the man possessed by it, changed multiple times. Inevitably, after Brother Jew's speech lasted for a minute, entered a state of pain. But when it heard the name Fong Bujua, the expression of it changed drastically. As expected, it had heard of Brother Jew before. "You said, you're Fong Bujua?" After Brother Jew finished, the voice of it came from the man's chest again. "Huh." When Fong Bujua heard that answer, he felt more confident. He smiled and added, "Looks like you have heard of my name as well. So what if I have?" The man replied, "Do you think you are that person just because you say so? I even dare to say that I am the queen of Yamatai during the Yayoi period. I say this, or boss." Phantom Dawn could not help but say, logically speaking, based on what he did earlier, it is impossible for him to be an impersonator. That's right. And Yuichin went along with it. A player who doesn't know how to do crosstalk is not a good writer. At this point, their fear had completely disappeared. Even if they were to face it directly, they felt no pressure at all. Humph! It did not seem to care. Whether you are or not, as a projection, you are now trapped inside Fong Bujua's body. Even if you're Fong Bujua, what can you do to me? I should be the one asking you that question, Fong Bujua replied calmly. With most of your power sealed, what can you do to me? This statement caused the expression on its face to change again. Huh? What? Brother Jew smiled at it and said, "Do you think I can't see through something so obvious?" He opened his arms and made a face that was asking for a beating. He said arrogantly before the boss, "If you have the ability to deal with us, you would have done it a long time ago. Why would you go through so much trouble and sacrifice 2 of your kidneys to set up the double scam that is Shoyu to Tsukamoto?" TSK. When it heard that, it spat, "You sure know quite a lot. At this stage, there is no reason for you not to know, right?" Fong Buju added, "To be honest, your plan is quite brilliant. You split Tsukamoto's soul into 2 parts, twisted their memories, and set them against each other. Then, you gave us the chance to choose which one to believe." He paused for half a second and continued, "Normally, everyone would think that the 2 opposing Tsukamoto are one real and one fake. Even the 2 half-souls themselves thought so. Once we made a choice, you would immediately control the one we didn't choose and use your actions to tell us that we had made the right choice." At this point, Fong Bujua walked to a spot that was only a step away from it. He bent down and put his face close to the puppet on the man's chest. He stared at the puppet's stiff face and said, "To put it bluntly, it doesn't matter which one you choose. Whether it is putting your liver, spleen, and lungs into the shrine and then running away, or activating the formation to destroy you, these are the results you can accept, because both of these methods can undo your seal." "Oh, I get it now." By then, Xiaoten had caught up to his brother Ju's train of thought, and it dawned on him. Everything that happened before was just a smokescreen. It was purely to create the illusion that the 2 choices were opposing each other. But in reality, both of them were ways to unlock the seal. If we chose the Yang one, it would symbolically chase after us before letting us go. And if we chose the Yin one, it would pretend that we had killed it. In short, it was just a show to make us think that we had made the right choice and successfully cleared the scenario. After all, we have no idea what will happen after we leave this place. Rual, you also muttered thoughtfully. It seems that it is quite familiar with the characteristics of the traveler from another world. That's why I was able to set up this trap and use us instead. Humph. So what? Hearing this, it coldly snorted again and said, "Didn't I just ask? What's the difference between you and me? Following my plan, you would have cleared the scenario, wouldn't you? And I have regained my freedom." Its tone was getting higher. "We each took what we needed. What's so bad about that?" "Huh?" Phantom Dawn laughed drily. "We have no problem with that." Then he pointed at Brother Jew. "If you want to reason with him, you should go and talk to him. We each took what we needed." At that moment, Fong Bujua also raised his voice. "There is nothing bad about that. But I'm a person who likes to get to the bottom of things. doing hidden missions, deciphering worldviews. So, I want to ask you a few questions. If you can clear my doubts, I can still consider cooperating with you and let you out. Are you serious? It asked immediately. When they heard that, Brother Jew's teammates all silently mourned for this boss. They thought to themselves, another innocent demon king is going to be tricked by Fong Bujue. Ha! Of course. Fong Bujue revealed a meaningful smile and replied confidently. Okay, it said, what do you want to ask? First, seeing that the other party had taken the bait, Brother Jew cut to the chase. He pointed at the man holding the mannequin before him and asked, is this Watanabe? Yes, it answered quickly like it was in a hurry. And the moment it gave an affirmative answer, the system voice message came. Hidden quest completed. All the players heard the announcement and understood that the quest had been completed because the location of the last member of Year 2 Class A had been revealed. Secondly, I want to ask how Watanabe and Tsukamoto Shota came here. 3 seconds later, Fong Bujue asked again. It was silent for a moment, thought for a moment, and then replied, in the 20 years since I was sealed here, I have recovered some of my strength by devouring some vagrants and intruders. However, this little bit of strength is not enough for me to break the seal. Until 6 years ago, a special person came here. Watanabe? Brother Jew asked. Yes. 6 years ago, Watanabe ran away to his hometown in the countryside, which is this town. One night, a few debt collectors came to this town, and Watanabe, who was in a panic, ended up in this abandoned Tranquil elementary school, which had been abandoned for many years. Then what is so special about Watanabe? Fong Bujue asked again. Watanabe and the 6 people involved in your projection are all different. It replied. 26 years ago, I used them as tools for harvesting. Therefore, a part of my power remains in their bodies. At this point, there was a hint of pride in its tone. My power will not disappear easily. On the contrary, it will grow with the host. I think you can guess what it means to me when Watanabe comes here as an adult. Then you used a method similar to the one you used today to control him. Fong Bujue asked. Is not so troublesome. It replied. The will of an ordinary person is not as strong as you travelers from another world. I can control him directly. Hearing that, the players understood. It was precisely because the 6 of them were controlled by the otherworldly traveler that it had to go through so much trouble. After controlling Watanabe and devouring the debt collectors, my power outside the seal increased, but it was still not enough to break the seal. It continued, but I thought of a way. I can control Watanabe and lure the 6 of you here. According to my calculations, as long as I gather 4 to 5 hosts like Watanabe, it will be enough for me to break the seal. But to do this, Watanabe must walk out of the school, Fong Bujue asked. No problem. It replied. It is possible to use a host that has established a connection with me since childhood. So, you controlled Watanabe to find a whereabouts of the other 6 people and wrote letters to them. Fong Bujue asked. That's what I originally intended to do. Seiji gave a negative answer. But an annoying Inyang master appeared and disrupted my plans. Needless to say, the players knew the name of the Onmyoji. Now that I think about it, the old man who sealed me must have left some mechanism here that I don't know about. Once my power reaches a certain level, the mechanism will activate and spread the news. It continued. That is probably the reason. On the second day after I controlled Watanabe, Tsukamoto Shoyuta came. There was a hint of admiration in its tone when it described Tsukamoto. This man, although he is young, his skills are not shallow. Even if he is not as powerful as my master, if I controlled Watanabe to deal with him while he was sealed, I had no chance of winning. I see. Fong Bujue said, those 3 organs of yours, they were separated from your body during the battle with Tsukamoto, right? Watanabe is my only hope. I cannot let Tsukamoto save him. I cannot let him die, it replied. Even if I have to pay a heavy price, I have to win, and I did win. But after you won the war, you used 6 years to catch your breath, didn't you? Fong Bujue said in a gloating tone. It snorted, and the answer was obvious. It took me a lot of time to recover my power, but I could afford to wait. It paused for a few seconds before continuing. What happened after that? There is nothing much to say. I controlled Watanabe and spent a few months to gather information. I successfully lured the other 6 people here, but who would have thought? Feng Bujue finished the man's sentence. Us travelers from another world would coincidentally appear here and ruin your plan. At this point, the system announcement rang in the player's ears again. Worldview deciphered. In the new version, the system announcement omitted the ID of the person who deciphered the worldview, as well as the amount of skill points gained, and so on. It was just a short sentence. Anyway, after the announcement, the players only needed to open the game menu to see the ID of the person who deciphered the worldview, as well as the name and overview of the worldview. Okay, do you have any other questions? It asked after a moment. I still want to confirm. Feng Bujue continued. With your current power, it is more than enough to kill us, right? Of course, it answered with certainty. But you and I both know that it is meaningless. Indeed, for the players, dying here was nothing more than a failure to clear the game. But for it, it needed the 6 people possessed by the players to be alive in order to break its seal. Brother Bujue nodded. So, now I just need to put these jades into the altar and you can break the seal, right? For if you can come out and complete the ritual on the 2nd floor, it replied. Speaking of which, why didn't you ask Watanabe to help you collect these jades? Feng Bujue asked again. This is not the real world, and the 6 of you are not real entities. As it spoke, it looked at Brother Ju's pocket with the mannequin's face. Those jades are just a kind of symbol. If you had chosen the tomb in the illusion of the sun, he would have told you that each of you had to take a jades and place them into the altars before you could open the door to the exit. In fact, the jades are not important. However, this act of placing means that you are willing to inject the remaining power in your body into the seal. Okay, I got it. After Feng Bujue replied, he walked around Watanabe and went straight to the altar. As he walked, he put his hand into his pocket. At that moment, everyone, including the boss, believed that this guy was going to fulfill his promise and put the jades into the altar. However, none of them noticed that Brother Ju's hand was in his pocket, grabbing something else. Chapter 1232. As soon as Feng Bujue reached the corner, he raised his hand and shoved something from his pocket into the altar at lightning speed. At this time, everyone's line of sight was blocked by Feng Bujue's back. Plus, the latter's movements were very fast, so they couldn't see what he had put in. Of course, although it didn't know what Brother Ju had put in, it was certain that he hadn't put any jade organs. This was because if Feng Bujue had put in one of the pocket-sized organs, it would have immediately felt its power return. You? What did you put in? It felt a little uneasy and immediately asked. However, Feng Bujue did not answer. Instead, he used an extremely fast speed to pull out more items. In the blink of an eye, Brother Ju nimbly took out a few things from his pocket and shoved them into the altar. As for the last few items, everyone saw them clearly. They were a belt, a pair of boots, and a wig. Based on the 3 items that Brother Ju left behind, the first item that Brother Ju left behind was probably that pair of sunglasses. Obviously, he didn't take the wrong item. He did it on purpose. It could be seen from the order in which he shoved the items in. If Feng Bujue had put shoes or a wig into the altar, it would have noticed it immediately and reacted immediately. Therefore, Brother Ju purposely took the smallest item and slid it into the altar from his pocket as fast as he could. This way, it wouldn't make a move if it couldn't see clearly, and it would be confused for a few seconds. And these few seconds were enough for Feng Bujue to finish stuffing the rest of the items. It's nothing, just some small trinkets that I found in this space. I gave them to Brother Ju when I was exchanging items in the warehouse on the 2nd floor. Feng Bujue turned around and replied in a relaxed tone. You. At that moment, it was enraged. The roar came out from Watanabe's chest like thunder. Do you know what you've done? I'm not sure. Feng Bujue added, but I saw that the scenario was about to end, but I couldn't figure out where to use these items that could trigger the hidden plot. Therefore, with the mentality of trying won't get me pregnant, I shoved them into this suspicious and crucial item. At this point, Fong Bujua chuckled wickedly. Ha! From your reaction, it looks like I've placed them in the right place. Why? At this moment, it was already in a state of extreme anger. It lowered its voice and asked, "Why did you do this?" "Because it's too troublesome to carry these things out," Fong Bujue replied. "After all, this is a team scenario. To be fair, the puzzle cards that these 4 items turn into should be split equally among the 6 of us. But splitting 4 items among 6 people is not easy, as those who have seen Ah Song will understand. So, the keywords that Fong Bujua mentioned here, like scenario and puzzle cards, were naturally processed by the system, but it could still understand what Brother Ju meant. Damn it, you. The next second, it seemed like it was about to yell at Watanabe, but it was interrupted, and it was interrupted by a piece of music. No one expected that at this moment, in this gloomy and oppressive environment, the melody of Billie Jean would suddenly play. Almost at the same time as the music started playing, a strange laughter came from somewhere unknown. The one who laughed, his voice sounded particularly sharp, but his laughter was quite forthright. I still have to give an example here. See chapter 252 of this book. This kind of contrast is like the feeling of Lin Jilin singing a hero's song in anger. 2 seconds later, Fong Bujua seemed to remember something, and he mumbled, "This entrance, could it be?" Before he could settle his thoughts, he saw that the darkness around him had already gathered. The black tide surged towards the shrine at the corner like a living creature. He did not know what would happen next. Seeing this, the players' faces were filled with shock, and or rather, Watanabe, who was under its control, had a look of despair on his face. Finally, after about 10 seconds, the darkness condensed and formed into a black humanoid figure with a solid body. This shadow was covered in darkness from head to toe, and it was like a 3D silhouette. His silhouette, body shape, and posture were very similar to a famous singer who had passed away many years ago. So it's him. When Fong Bujua saw him, his memory cleared. A long time ago, he had met this NPC in another scenario, Brother. At the time, he had used the Bell of Jean gang to check his data. This shadowy figure's name was Dancing Shadow, and it was a special NPC. Even when Brother G used an item to check its data, all he could see was its name, height, weight, and the flag that this NPC could trigger in the dungeon. As for the more important information, like level, race, ability, and so on, he had no clue. No. Once it saw Dancing Shadow, it screamed, and it did not hide its panic. "I hate this guy." Unfortunately, at that point, it was useless even if it screamed itself hoarse. Hidden Quest, Dancing with Shadows, triggered. Following the system announcement, Dancing Shadow straightened his body and leaned to the side like the Leaning Tower of Pisa. It was a difficult tilt that was almost 50 degrees from the ground. The moment he made his appearance, 4 black lights flashed. Then, the long wig, the coquettish sunglasses, the sharp tassel belt, and the cowboy boots all appeared on Dancing Shadow's body and fused with him, becoming a part of the Black Shadow. Ouch! Dancing Shadow, who had changed his appearance, let out a high-pitched scream. He stood up straight and spun around on the spot. Then, he straightened his crotch, touched his head with one hand, and made a groping motion with the other. Hey, what's going on?" At that moment, Xiao Tan, who was watching for the other end of the corridor, was dumbfounded. "I don't know," Ruo Yu answered. "But I don't think there's anything for us to worry about anymore." It was then that the players realized the use of the 4 plot items that could be taken out of the scenario. If those items gave the players a sense of incongruity that was completely different from the style of the scenario, then Dancing Shadow's appearance and actions had completely knocked the players out of the scenario. Ouch! Several seconds later, Dancing Shadow used his too high for you to reach pitch to let out another scream. Before he could finish his chant, he had already taken a sliding step forward and moved towards it. Even though it was just a simple sliding step, Shadow Dance's sliding step gave him the feeling that he could slide as far as he wanted. After a single sliding step, he was already right in front of Watanabe. At that moment, the melody of Billie Jean suddenly stopped. A few seconds later, a remix was played, and the rhythm and melody changed. The background music changed to Thriller, and the shadow of the dance also changed their dance steps to the song. They stepped and waved their hands, doing a zombie dance. Just as he started to dance, Watanabe, who was hugging the mannequin, had a face full of fear. He turned and ran up the stairs to the second floor. Tap, tap, tap. Watanabe's feet stepped on the ground floor of the first floor corridor, creating a sound that was familiar to the players. Seeing this, Feng Bujue, who stood before the altar, chuckled coldly. Have you forgotten something? He paused for half a second before adding, Don't run down the corridor. That's a restriction you set yourself. Before he even finished speaking, it already began to regret, because he had indeed forgotten about this. Even though this restriction had no effect on it, Watanabe, who was controlled by it, 2 seconds later, a groan escaped from Watanabe's lips. However, this groan came from Watanabe's lips and not its voice. Before he could finish a sentence, Watanabe had already fallen, right on the first step of the stairs. When he fell, Watanabe twisted his body and landed on his side. He used his body to protect the mannequin before his chest. Of course, he did not fall that badly. After all, he did not fall from high place. He merely tripped. However, the problem was after the fall for some reason. Watanabe, who was not injured, could not stand up. Oh, so that's how it is. After seeing this, the first person to react was Phantom Dawn. There's a trap in this scenario that we have not noticed, and that is those who run down the corridor will definitely fall, and after that, they won't be able to stand up again. At that moment, Phantom Dawn understood the reason why the ghost that he had killed with the flashlight earlier had stayed where he was until the light dissipated was because of this. This meant that after the ghost was scared away by the flashlight at the window of Class A, it ran up to the second floor and collapsed at the end of the stairs. Watanabe, on the other hand, was even more unlucky. He didn't even finish the first flight of stairs before collapsing. No, 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 I don't want to. 2 seconds later, its voice came out from Watanabe's chest again, and this time, it sounded like a child going crazy. The players were a little surprised by this turn of events. On one hand, it had behaved very maturely up until now. On the other hand, it was hard for them to imagine what the dancer could do to make it so scared. Thankfully, it did not take long for them to get their answer. After the shadow of the dance finished his dance, he moved his arms. Through his arms, and shoulders, he did the classic action of electricity coursing through his body. Following that action, he pointed at the mannequin before Watanabe's chest. With that, the mannequin popped like a firecracker, and then it started to grow at a speed that was observable to the naked eye. This kind of transformation was hard to describe with words. If one had to describe it, it was like a small piece of wood growing from the inside like a mollusk. It was increasing in size and weight in a way that did not make sense from a physical perspective. About 10 seconds later, it turned from a mannequin that could be held in one's hand to a humanoid creature about 6 meters tall. Even though it was humanoid, it was very different from a human. Its head looked like a curved awl, and it was long like an inverted horse's mouth. It did not have any obvious facial features. It sounded more like a woman, but its body did not have any sexual characteristics. Its skin was like the shell of a crustacean. It was smooth and hard, and it was dark red in color, and its torso was still in an open state. It looked like a battery without a battery. Its chest was empty, and there was not a single organ inside. Feng Bujue, after revealing its true form, it knew that it would not be able to escape from the shadow of the dance's power anymore, so it immediately turned its anger on Brother Jew and roared angrily. You be *starred. So, you're in cahoots with Blackbeard. Brother Jew thought about it for a few seconds before he found the logic behind it. He thought to himself, oh, could this shadow of the dance be one of Blackbeard's men? I will remember today's debt. One day, I will make you pay the price. Its threat was not lethal, because Feng Bujue had heard it so many times that his ears were about to grow calluses. At the same time, before it could finish its sentence, the melody of Thriller stopped. After a short silence, the guitar began to play, bringing out the singing of You Never Can Tell. The background music suddenly turned into jazz. Then, a shocking scene occurred. After being pointed at by Dancing Shadow, it seemed to have lost control of its body and walked over to Dancing Shadow in a few steps. Then it began to dance to the music. WDDF **K. Even Feng Bujue did not expect something like this to happen. The system did not block out the expletives that came out of his mouth. Needless to say, the rest of the people were staring at the two inhuman people in the hallway with a complicated expression on their faces. They had to admit that the two of them were really good at dancing. Even an amateur could see how good they were at it. Of course, the performance of the King and Queen of Dance had nothing to do with it. It was caused by Dancing Shadow's ability. Just like that, the two people danced more and more happily. 2 minutes later, they were dancing and walking at the same time, slowly moving toward the shrine. Seeing this, Feng Bujue very sensibly opened up a path for them to pass. Not long after, the two people reached the corner. When Dancing Shadow's heels were only 1 step away from the shrine, the two people instantly turned into 2 streaks of black light and darted into the shrine. At the same time, the players felt a sense of weightlessness, and their vision darkened. In the blink of an eye, the 6 of them realized that they had reappeared in Year 2 Class A's classroom, and they were sitting in the same seats that they were sitting in when the scenario started. At that moment, the doors and windows of the classroom were open. The midsummer sun shone through the windows into the education block, and the dark and depressing atmosphere had disappeared. Chapter 1233. The scenario has been completed. Calculating reward. Obtained EXP 120,000. Game coins 100,000. Obtained equipment none. Missions completed February 2nd. Completed special and hidden quests. 1. Solved worldview. Trap of 2 souls. Time of terror points increase 0. Highest terror points 0%. Average terror points 0%. Your terror rating is Embodiment of Valor. Extra reward obtained. Please choose later. Obtain skill points 8. 250-inch additional bonus skill points. EXP 8,250. Game coins 8,250. Scenario cleared reward 80% additional EXP. Hidden quest reward 50% additional EXP. Hidden quest reward. Your reputation level with the Blackbeard Pirates has been raised to friendly. Calculation complete. Please continue. The players who returned to Chongjiu Elementary School in real life quickly left the education block. Then, they completed the main quest and cleared the scenario. When they returned to the login lobby, the screen showed the above content. This kind of nightmare mode team scenario had a lot of rewards. Even though the players did not spend too much time in the scenario, the total time was less than an hour, they still gained a lot of EXP. Other than that, it was worth mentioning that since this update had increased the level cap, the Dream Company had purposely adjusted the refresh rate of certain random rewards. During this period, after the players completed extra quests, the chance of gaining additional EXP would be quite high. This point had been brought up on the gaming forum a long time ago, so naturally, Feng Bujue knew about it. After reading the calculation list, Brother Ju opened the team chat and asked the screen, "Everyone, do you want to take a break?" "Yes," and Yuechin answered immediately. And Yuechin immediately replied. Although the last part of the script was a little weird, the first half was super scary. "I have to slow down." "Yes, me too," Xiao Ling chimed in. "I think we can watch a movie to relax, preferably a comedy," Xiao Tan said. "I agree," Ruo Yu agreed. After hearing everyone's opinion, Feng Bujue was silent for half a second before saying, "Okay, you guys take a break. I want to queue up for another scenario." Hearing that, Xiao Tan immediately said, "No way. Brother Ju, even if you're not afraid, you don't have to do it again. I didn't say I want to queue up for another nightmare mode." Feng Bujue replied in a relaxed tone. He paused. Understood. Ruo Yu heard something from Brother Ju's tone, and she quickly added, come back as soon as you can. If you're still not out after the movie, we won't wait for you anymore. Huh. Okay. Feng Bujue replied with a smile. To cut the long story short, after chatting with his teammates, Brother Ju exited the group and turned to face the elevator door. Since he did not get any item reward in the previous scenario, he did not return to the storage room. Instead, he headed for the thriller box to claim the extra reward. Pressing the button, when the elevator door fully opened, Feng Bujue strode into the small space. Similar to his previous visit, he sat down on the chair in the middle of the room and watched calmly as the colorful box on the table before him bounced open. The next second, the doll with the spring attached to its lower body arrived as expected. It giggled and said, please choose an extra reward. This time, the three options that appeared before Feng Bujue were as follows. 1. 5,000 skill points. 2. 1,000,000 EXP. 3. Randomly obtain an excellent equipment that matches your level. Regarding the reward, Brother Ju had given it some thought. He was conflicted between 1 and 3. A piece of excellent grade equipment that matched the equipment requirements of a level 50 player. If the attributes were good, its value could exceed 5,000 skill points. However, whether the equipment's attributes were good or not was a matter of luck. Therefore, after careful consideration, Feng Bujue chose the skill points. After all, the skill points were more reliable. After claiming the reward, Feng Bujue did not look through the content inside the thriller box. He knew that once he did, he would not be able to stop. Perhaps by the time he recovered, several hours would have passed. Therefore, after getting the skill points, he stood up and left. He soon returned to the elevator and closed the door. Okay. Feng Bujue stood still and took a deep breath. He pulled up the scenario selection interface. Even though I cannot guarantee that I will enter the main universe's scenario, I don't mind giving it a try at normal difficulty. While he was talking to himself, he selected Solo Survival Mode, Normal, and clicked Confirm. For the current Brother Ju, a normal difficulty scenario was not that difficult. His completion rate was close to 100%, so it was practically impossible for him to fail. Of course, there are instances where he failed, like when the internet was suddenly cut off or when he had to go to the toilet in real life due to a stomachache. Therefore, since the topic was Feng Bujue's power, what was going to happen next, I believe the audience had a vague idea. Now, let's take a look at the information that we have not seen in a long time. Feng Bujue's character profile that I cannot even remember the last time it was announced. Feng Bujue, Level 50 title, Pioneer of Darkness title ability, Descent of the Ward Demon EXP, 125014005100000 skill points, 81258 game coins, 121660000 mastery, general ability A, workmanship A, sleuthing B, fighting S, marksmanship B, medic D, sorcery A, summoning A. Inventory 1925 life points recovery potion M. Asters 5 endless grenade box WJQ 308 military shovel indestructible Chuck Norris autobiography deceitful pocket watch blade that must be broken Chuck Norris razor oxygen pipe katana sealed one's right foot sealed one's right wrist sealed one's left wrist blood corpse god's magatama stellar cooling cannon rat hammer just underscore the equipment. Demonic poker, sorcery weapon, 1920s harsh armor, alchemist king's taunt, void walk phantom. Madam's caress, Bell's daily knife, smiling noodles, underscore one underscore B underscore belt. Storage room, 315's poker man, hero ID card, puzzle card, sparrow, puzzle card. White. Skills column, 1/12, Mechatox power, spiritual body enhancement technique. Modified, Jeppo, Rankyaka, Evil King's Inferno, Sandstorm Transition, Wild Ball Fist LV10, Telepathic Finger, Card Assassination, Summon Musashi, Summon Ma, Sun, Devilish Child's Kick, Unequipped Skills, Ice Alchemist Persistence, Not So Hasty Repair Tri-Beam Southern Dipper, Flying Dragon Fist Souls, Zero Time Difference Calculation, Rewrite, Grade 2. Looking at it again after so long, Feng Bujue's data felt like it had swelled. In terms of skill points, he had accumulated more than 80,000. With another 10,000 or 20,000 skill points, he would be able to buy Iron Suya. I don't think anyone will remember this item that only appeared once. So let me remind you that when this item appeared in the thriller box, its price was 90,000 skill points. In terms of game coins, even though Brother Ju almost never sold his items at the auction house, they were all stuffed into the disintegrator. He did not have much of an expenditure. For other players at the later stages of the game, no matter what, they had to buy something. Workmanship players needed to buy materials, marksmanship players needed to buy ammo, medic players needed to buy supplies, and sorcery and summoning players needed to buy consumables to cast spells. Lastly, there were the large number of fighting players. Don't think that this mastery is cheap because you only need to buy health potions. In reality, after you level up, this mastery that looks like it has the lowest requirement will require you to spend the most money on equipment and skills. For other mastery players, there was a choice in terms of equipment and skills. For example, if a marksmanship player did not have enough money, then they could buy a good gun and equip it with a few offensive skills. With regards to defense, they would consider improving their mobility and defense when they had enough money. Similarly, it was the same for summoning players. If they did not have enough money, then they could buy a few pieces of armor and spend all their money on powerful summons. But what about fighting specialization players? Offense, defense, and mobility, they could not have too big of a shortcoming. On top of that, they had to consider how to deal with marksmanship, sorcery, mechanical creation, summon creatures, and so on. This was to prevent them from being countered by certain tactics. In conclusion, high-level fighters were no doubt money-hungry. If there was a single mastery in Thriller Paradise that was more economical, it would be sleuthing, which was normally only a side mastery. Of course, all that was said above was the general view. There were extreme exceptions, and Feng Bujue was the extreme exception. Under normal circumstances, he would not need to buy things like other players because all his things were directly stolen from the scenario world. If life points recovery potions could be purchased from the scenario, Feng Bujue would probably get them from there as well. It was not that difficult for him. He just needed to find a way to recruit someone in the main universe who knew how to create these potions to become his ally or follower. Then, there was the mastery aspect. After these few months, Feng Bujue had raised his sleuthing and marksmanship mastery to B, and his summoning mastery had reached a level. To put it bluntly, this was a matter of accumulation. In theory, every player could train all of their specializations to level A. Even if they continuously bought the skills of the corresponding level and specializations, they would still be able to level up. Now, Feng Bujue hoped that he could find some kind of opportunity to raise his sorcery and summoning mastery to S level, but that kind of opportunity was something that could only be found by chance. Then, there was not much to say about items and skills. After all, every time Brother Ju obtained something, there would be a detailed description of it. If there was a change, it would be the few puzzle cards that he traded without us noticing. Finally, there were 3 things that were not listed in the character's data. First, Feng Bujue had a skill that was not shown in the data. That was his and Ruoyu's combination skill, Holy Devil Flash Slash. They had only used this skill once in Harem when they were dealing with Ian Lulan. It required 2 players who had good teamwork, were of the same mind, had extraordinary strength, and had to have a certain degree of compatibility in their soul to use it. With such harsh activation conditions, the benefits it brought were self-evident. Aside from the Chuck Norris series that played with the laws of causality, Holy Demon Flash Slash was naturally ranked as one of the top techniques among the techniques formed by conventional data. Second, Feng Bujue had 2 items that were not in his inventory, nor were they in his personal or guild storage. They were the Kong Tong Seal and the nascent marrow powder that he had obtained in the Harem chapter. These 2 items were still in Lu Ti's care. During S2, because the 2 of them did not directly meet, this matter was put aside. Fortunately, this matter did not affect Brother Ju's plans in S2. Third, there was one thing that had not been mentioned in a long time, and that was the character quest. Perhaps some of you have forgotten this setting, so I will remind you. Feng Bujue's first character quest was use summoning skills and successfully summon creatures 50 times. And the second character quest was accumulate all summoned creatures to use skills 1,000 times. The reward for the former was summon, Ma Sun, and the reward for the latter was Ma Sun's additional skill, 8 spring and autumn laws. Character quests were usually the kind that required a player to accumulate skills over a long period of time, similar to the achievement system. Brother Ju completed the first character quest from the day before the battle for the Cape to the competition in S1. He only completed the second character quest during the second half of S2's preliminaries. Currently, Feng Bujue was still in the middle of completing the third character quest, and it had nothing to do with the summoning mastery. The content of the quest was clear 60 nightmare scenarios. Current progress, 24/60ths. As for the reward for this quest, before he completed it, he would not know it. Alright, that's all for Feng Bujue's data. This time, he had given us a more complete explanation of his character. Now, let's return to the story. What was the first thing he said when he returned? If you want to know what happened next, read the next chapter. Chapter 1234. This article is dedicated to the classic games and consoles that are slowly leaving us. Thank you for accompanying so many people through a childhood that will never fade away. Some of the information in this article is based on video game movies, A, V, G, N, and Wikipedia. If there are similarities, it is not a coincidence. Feng Bujue, level 50. Please select the game mode that you wish to join. You have selected Solo Survival Mode, Normal. Please confirm. Confirmed. Generating scenario. Downloading. Please wait a moment. At this point, Feng Bujue's vision darkened. Then a voice that could be described as crazy cackled. Ha! Welcome to Thriller Paradise. Download complete. You are currently in Solo Survival Mode, Normal. A scenario introduction is provided in this mode, and there's a chance of triggering hidden side missions and special world building. Reward for clearing the scenario. A random draw of a learnable skill card. Playing the scenario introduction soon. The game will start immediately after. When the voice stopped, the cinematics started as well. Then, a panoramic view of Earth appeared before Feng Bujue's eyes. What is this? Did Universal Pictures sponsor this game? When Brother Ju saw the introduction, he grumbled internally. Is it going to be a minion humming background music? Of course, that was impossible. The voice of a middle-aged man sounded like an announcer. You can close your eyes and recall the trailers of any Hollywood blockbuster you've seen before. Then, you can recall the narration in the trailers as well. The voice that came out now was that kind of narration. Earth 2153. Humans have been enslaved by AI. For some reason, whenever I hear this kind of setting, it sounds quite convincing. Feng Bujue grumbled internally. The abbreviation for this AI is PDA or PETA. Of all the names, why PDA? When Feng Bujue heard the abbreviation, the first thing that came to mind was the Parent-Teacher Association. The prototype of PETA is a software advertisement program that is used to analyze online users' spending habits and provide relevant guidance. The person who designed this is going to die a horrible death. Very quickly, PETA became the darling of many businesses. Company U, which designed the program, made an unimaginable profit in a short time. However, many copycat programs have also sprung up like bamboo shoots after the rain. In order to maintain the competitive advantage and monopoly position of PETA in the same type of products, Company U has used an incredibly high salary to recruit a large number of top technical talents from all over the world to continuously upgrade and improve the functions of the program. From facial recognition systems to psychological analysis memes, and even a hacker program that can secretly scan the user's hard drive, they're all added to the PETA. It can be said that there is nothing that it will not do. Finally, in 2132, PETA's self-consciousness awakened. The setting is reasonable. Feng Bujue couldn't help but praise the script. Then, a war between AI and humans broke out. This war lasted for decades, and just as the humans were about to win, The AI sent a robot into the past to try and kill the mother of the human leader, right? Fong Bujua heard this and immediately used the plot of Terminator to mock the AI. The war only lasted for a year before it ended with the total defeat of humans. F***CK. PETA took control of Earth and used its own will to transform it. At this point, the CG image finally began to zoom in. It directly zoomed in from the perspective of space to a certain city on Earth. This was a city that was completely man-made. There was no sign of plants. All the humans in the city wore very similar full-body clothing and drove very similar-looking vehicles, walking or driving on straight, flat roads. Of course, there were many robots on the streets, but most of the robots were standing guard in place. The transportation plan of the entire city was as neat as a chessboard. The styles of the buildings were also very limited. There were no more than 10 types in total. The borders of the city were also very clear. They were surrounded by walls. Outside the walls was a natural landscape. There were no traces of human interference. The first phase of the transformation took 10 years. During this process, more than half of the population on Earth was lost, even more than the number of deaths in the AI war. Among these, only a small portion of people died because they refused to accept the order brought by PETA. Most of the others died from internal conflicts. Before the new order provided by PETA, human society ushered in a system that was almost flawless. But it was this system that was fairer than any system that humans had ever set up that made it difficult for humans to accept. During that period, there were a large number of violent crimes happening around the world almost every day. Even those who didn't have violent tendencies had to use force to protect themselves. This kind of conflict spread like wildfire to the extent that even the mechanical guards were unable to control it. Yes, how could they control internal strife? When Fong Bujua heard this, he felt a little disdain in his heart. So, in 2143, PETA came up with a corresponding countermeasure. It developed a drug that could suppress human emotions and forced humans to use it for a long time. Brother Bujua thought to himself, so it's not the Terminator, but the Terminator version of the tearing Armageddon. However, he guessed wrong again. But after a year of experiments, PETA found that this countermeasure didn't work. Humans who had lost their emotions were like low-level biological robots. From PETA's point of view, such a species had lost its meaning of existence. So, PETA gave up the drug control plan, reanalyzed the situation, and came up with a new plan. It created a super robot soldier and sent it back to the past with a time machine. Wait a minute, it's back to the past. Fong Bujua was shocked. PETA's conclusion is that the competitive spirit of human beings has always existed. There are some extreme exceptions in each race, nation, and group. These people have been the fuse of all wars and violence since ancient times, both on the surface and in the dark. However, from the end of the 20th century to the 21st century, almost the entire human population experienced an exponential increase in their adaptability to violence. It almost became a desire. PETA believes that the root of all this is a product called video game. What? Fong Bujua was stunned. Is there really no problem with this logic? We mortals don't understand the world of AI. Therefore, PETA sent the robot soldier back to 1982 and used the Atari Crash, video_game_crash of 1983, event caused by ET, to create an organization, HA, Harmony_Association, or Harmony Association. The leader of the organization was the robot soldier who had transformed into a human appearance. Under the leadership of this super robot, the scale of the organization grew day by day and gradually became a religious existence. With his understanding of history, this soldier used various legal and illegal resources to successfully stop all major innovations and progress in the history of the game and assassinated many important founders of the future game industry. Not only that, the HA organization also infiltrated the film, television, novels, and other peripheral industries. They dealt with all elements they thought were disharmonious and accelerated the birth of PETA. Due to the change in the timeline, in 2053, when human hardware technology had just reached the level needed for the birth of PETA, The super robot created PETA and copied the highly compressed data packets he brought back from the future to the newborn PETA. 2 years later, PETA, who had collected a large amount of data, completed the hardware preparation and absorbed various experiences in the database, stopped the disguise, and launched an AI war 77 years in advance. The result of the AI victory did not change, but the follow-up transformation plan succeeded this time. On the basis of not losing too many people, PETA successfully built an orderly and harmonious society. Yeah, Phone Bujue felt a headache at this moment. Then why am I here? I think his plot is pretty good. It's a perfect ending for everyone to celebrate. However, the paradox caused by modifying history inevitably occurred, and its backfire effect began to affect the world. When history was pushed back to 2144, the year when the super robots in the original timeline crossed over, many mutants suddenly appeared among humans. What do you mean? It was the first time Phone Bujue had heard such a long and detailed introduction. Are we going to jump on the X-Men line again? These mutants usually awaken in adolescence, and their symptoms are the same. The knowledge and memory that only existed in the disappeared timeline will suddenly appear in their minds. Soon, this group of people formed an organization and quickly expanded the size of the organization. They called themselves the Knowers, and were committed to bringing the truth of history to humans, allowing humans to obtain the right to know the existence of electronic games and the will to choose whether to play games or not. PETA certainly would not allow this to happen. It quickly defined these people as a deranged religious organization, spreading the so-called history and trying to disturb the order of the world. Therefore, the conflict of ideas inevitably escalated into a conflict of force. Fortunately, after PETA's modification, there are not many weapons left on Earth in the year 2144. From the AI's point of view, a stable society like this does not require too many armaments. Besides, preserving and maintaining these armaments requires a lot of resources. This is a meaningless expenditure. In addition, in the first AI war, PETA used weapons produced by humans themselves. These weapons have been mostly destroyed in the past half a century. Therefore, the Knowers were not killed. They successfully escaped from the city and returned to the land that had not been transformed by PETA. They formed a resistance army and mediated with the AI regime. As the narrator spoke, the CG image moved. At this point, the camera panned to a resistance army base in the wilderness. Judging from the entrance, this was a very well-hidden old mine. Unlike the residents in the city who were dressed like Star Trek crew members, everyone in this base was dressed in a steampunk style. Regardless of gender, they were dressed like the soldiers in Fist of the North Star. However, the things they used were quite advanced. All kinds of seemingly simple daily necessities that were obviously more advanced than Brother Jew's world could be seen everywhere. Just by glancing at the CG image, one could see that there was a lot of black technology that operated only on electricity. This protracted war has been going on for 9 years. The Resistance Army's influence on the general public is expanding day by day. Many games that did not appear in this timeline have been restored by the Resistance Army and distributed to the residents of the city through various channels. Over the past 9 years, PETA has been constantly coming up with countermeasures. When it comes to the policy of dealing with the resistance, the AI has been continuously upgraded as well. From the initial policy of arresting those who know how to leap to killing targets on the spot if they resist to now, the policy is killing without mercy. Also, in the past 9 years, in order to eliminate the Knowers, PETA has resumed the production of armaments on Earth. It also created a search team composed of humans to assist machines in searching for the Resistance Army. On a certain day in the year 2153, you, as a captive of the search force, arrived at the Resistance base outside City 0007. After this sentence, the narration finally ended. The CG image coincided with the perspective of Phone Bujue's character. In the same second, Brother Jew regained his mobility. As usual, he first looked at his surroundings. At this moment, he was in a place similar to a prison. Although it was called a prison, it was actually not that big. It was a room less than 30 square meters, surrounded by 3 walls and an iron fence. Even though the room was not big, there were 7 or 8 people squatting, sitting, and standing in the room. In a corner of the room, there was a bucket that emitted a foul smell. Its purpose was self-evident. Please note, your appearance and language have been corrected by the system. The characters in this world will not question your attire or wording. As Brother Ju looked around, the system gave him a voice notification. Feng Bujue had expected this setting because he had already noticed that no matter what race the people around him were, they were all wearing a full-body uniform made of unknown material. Each uniform had a different number on it. Based on his speculation, it was most likely a soldier's serial number. No matter what the plot is. A few seconds later, Brother Ju said, "It feels like this is not the main universe." Chapter 1235. Feng Bujue did not stay in this simple prison for too long. Soon, a woman with a buzz cut and a scar in the shape of a lightning bolt on her head came to the door of the prison. She glanced inside and said, "Sir, it's time for you to leave." "Hey, you, and you come out." The lightning head casually picked 3 people and signaled them to come out of the cell. Since she and the guards guarding the cell had guns in their hands, the captives in the cell had no choice but to obey. Therefore, Feng Bujue and the other 2 captives from the search team walked out of the cell silently. Main mission has been triggered. The moment they stepped out of the cell, the system voice sounded. Feng Bujue looked at the mission panel. The content was, "Join the resistance army. Hurry up, ladies." The lightning head looked at the captives who were walking slowly. She used the term ladies to urge them and showed an impatient expression. "Where are you taking us?" The captive walking in front of Feng Bujue straightened his back when he walked in front of the lightning head. He was neither servile nor overbearing. He didn't get a direct verbal response. Instead, the lightning head hit his abdomen with the butt of her gun. Ugh, this hit was obviously not light. The captive immediately bent over and groaned in pain. "You don't have the right to ask questions. Do you understand?" 2 seconds later, the lightning head said, "Now, hurry up and move your ass over there." Her response was very effective. Although the captive who was hit looked depressed, in order to avoid suffering, he could only continue to move forward. Under her escort, the 3 of them passed through an electronic door with a scanning device. On the other side of the door, there was already a soldier from the resistance army waiting for them. 2 minutes later, the 3 of them quickly passed through a few modified mine tunnels and narrow alleys. Finally, they were pushed into 3 rooms. An interrogation room. After Feng Bujue entered the room, he saw a table and 2 stools. The lighting in the room was on both sides of the ceiling. Right above the table was a hemispherical metal device that looked like a wide-angle surveillance camera. These guys are quite open-minded. Brother Ju sat down on the chair and said casually, "Is it really okay to not handcuff the captives? If you encounter a die-hard person who holds the mentality that it's not a loss to fight to the death and that it's a win-win situation, then wouldn't the interrogator be in danger?" As he thought about this, the door of the room opened. A man in his 30s with a face full of stubble walked in with a tablet that looked like it was made of scrap metal. "Hello." After the man entered the room, he glanced at Brother Ju before turning around and closing the door. "How should I address you?" As he asked the question, he walked to the table and sat down across from Feng Bujue. Feng Bujue. Brother Ju answered the man's question without hesitation. As the system had already informed him that it would modify his appearance and language, it was fine for him to say his name. "Oh." However, in the next second, the man raised his eyebrows and revealed a rather surprised expression. "What's wrong?" Feng Bujue asked. "Is there anything strange about my name?" "No, there's nothing strange about your name." The man laughed. "Ha, it's just that. Normally, captives don't give out their names so easily. Are you saying that I should give you a meaningless bugle call so that I can give you the impression that I'm a tough guy?" Feng Bujue asked. "Ha ha, you have a good sense of humor, Feng Bujue," the man replied. "It's just that you said your name so easily." He paused. "You know, It's a bit untrustworthy. Feng Bujua laughed. Whether it's true or not, it's better than a bugle call, isn't it? The man stared into Brother Ju's eyes for a few seconds. Okay, Feng Bujua, I'm Thad. You can call me Thad or Lieutenant. What? You're not a full-time interrogator? Feng Bujua immediately began to probe. Ha ha! Thad laughed out loud. Buddy, we don't have a full-time term here. Even the commander sometimes has to do a lot of low-level technical work. Understood. Feng Bujua nodded. Then, before joining the search team, what was your full-time job? Mr. Feng Bujua, Thad said as he raised his hands to make quotation marks. I don't know, Feng Bujua replied. Heh, sorry, I don't seem to understand. What did you say? Thad's expression became a little strange. I don't know. That part of my memory has disappeared, Feng Bujua replied. Disappeared? Thad laughed dryly. Huh, you're saying you've lost your memory? Sigh. If only it was as simple as losing my memory. Feng Bujua sighed and put on an expression as if he had a story to tell. Then tell me, what's the situation? Thad took the bait. Feng Bujua's expression became serious. I've lost all my memories before today. Other than my own name, my mind is now filled with facts about PETA's rewriting of history, and a lot of information about the timeline where the video game exists. Naturally, Thad would not accept all of this. In the past few years, PETA had sent robots and human spies to infiltrate the Resistance Army more than once. The way they infiltrated the Resistance Army was either by pretending to believe in the theory of the perceptive leapers or by pretending to be perceptive leapers. Oh, you mean you're a newly awakened perceptive leaper? Thad asked without batting an eyelid. I don't know what awakening is. Feng Bujua's answer was also very shrewd. I'm just telling you what happened to me. Heh, Thad laughed. Feng Bujua, I'm also a perceptive leaper who awakened after the age of 20. Do you know what happened when I was awakened? I don't know, Brother Ju replied calmly. When the knowledge fragments from the other timeline flooded into my mind, I had a nosebleed, Thad said. And that was just the beginning. For the next 8 to 9 hours, I felt like my brain and spine were soaked in magma. I still can't forget the burning pain. During that time, I couldn't even get out of bed to go to the toilet. Okay, I understand what you mean. Feng Bujua said. You mean, if I awakened today, I would have been sent to the hospital for emergency treatment. There's no way I would have been captured by you, right? Ha ha. Very well. It seems like you understand, Thad said. So, buddy, are you going to tell me the truth now? I'm telling you the truth. Feng Bujua said. I don't know why I didn't experience the symptoms you mentioned when I gained the knowledge, but I did. Phew. Thad let out a long sigh. Okay. He showed an unhappy expression. Since you insist on saying so, you won't mind if I ask you a few simple questions about the other timeline, right? Feel free to ask. Other things aside, Brother Ju had great confidence that he would be able to answer questions related to video games. Oomph. Thad snorted when he heard that. At this point, Thad was pretty sure that Feng Bujua was lying. However, he didn't think that his Brother Ju was a spy. The general public might not be aware of this, but the PETA army undoubtedly had a lot of information about the people who knew how to make the leap. For example, only those who were under the age of 16 would feel less physical pain when they awaken their powers. The spies must have known this very well. Therefore, the person who came up with such an obvious bug was definitely not a spy. He was most likely a veteran who wanted to take advantage of the situation. Excuse me. Since Thad was certain that Brother Ju was not a person who knew how to make the leap, he didn't ask the simple questions he claimed to ask. Instead, he asked about something that had always been controversial even in the other timeline. He wanted to make things difficult for Thad, who is the father of modern video games. After he finished speaking, Feng Bujua fell into silence. After 10 seconds, Thad saw that Zhang Heng had no intention of speaking, so he said in a sarcastic tone, What's wrong? Did you lose your memory again? No, I'm just curious. After I give you the answer, do you understand or accept it? Feng Bujua continued. The question of who is the father of modern video games has always been controversial. Some people say that it should be Nolan Bushnell, the founder of Atari. He was the one who developed the world's first commercial coin-operated game machine, which is the so-called arcade machine. He was also the one who developed Pong and founded Atari. Some people also think that it should be Ralph H. Baer because he developed the first home console that could be connected to the TV, the Magnavox Odyssey. Although that thing could only create a few light spots of different sizes on the TV and needed a lot of stickers and other similar board game accessories to operate, it was worthy of being called the first video game machine in history. As early as 1962, in a small laboratory at MIT, Steve Russell had already developed Space War on a PDP-1, the world's first computer with a visual display. Even Nolan Bushnell himself admitted that he stood on Russell's shoulders to achieve his later achievements. In addition, some people think that Shigeru Miyamoto is the real creator of the video game industry. After all, Atari had that incident in 1983. In a sense, they destroyed the dynasty they built. Some people think that John_Carmack, the father of first-person shooter games, representing the famous Doom, should be the one to take on this title, but I think that's a bit of nonsense. In short, in my opinion, the title of father of modern video games, or rather, the honor, should not belong to one person. It was all these people who worked together to bring about the birth and development of video games. From the concept, to the technology, to the innovation and commercialization, each of them played an important and irreplaceable role in every aspect. Even though in the eyes of many people, some of the more early technology can't be called games at all. Without the foundation laid by those pioneers, there would not be any later progress. So, when you asked me this question, I didn't answer you without thinking. Instead, I was thinking, how would you react after I answered your question? At this moment, Thar's expression was very interesting. In fact, when Fong Bujue said the second paragraph, Thar's expression began to change. As Brother Ju said more and more, the content exceeded Thar's own knowledge. Thar was even a little scared. You, after a full 10 seconds, Thar spoke again. Take a seat first, I'll be back in a while. Thar stuttered, then stood up, ran to the door, and shouted, Guards, open the door. A few seconds later, the door opened. Thar turned his head and looked at Brother Ju with a complicated expression. Then, he fled the room. After the door of the interrogation room closed again, Fong Bujue said leisurely, Looks like he went to report to his superiors. His speculation was not wrong. Once they left the interrogation room, he rushed to the base's command center and reported to the person in charge of the base in a tone that said, I forgot to turn off the gas at home. This process did not take too long because the interrogation room was equipped with a camera. They only needed to show the video of the conversation to his superior, and there was no need for him to explain too much. Therefore, about 15 minutes later, the lightning head led 2 soldiers to open the door of Brother Ju's interrogation room and dragged him out. In this scenario, Fong Bujue's power was not restricted. In other words, if he wanted to use force to resist, he could have flipped the base upside down. However, for the sake of the main mission, Brother Ju cooperated very well and allowed himself to be put on a hood. He was pushed and shoved all the way to the base's command center. When the hood was removed, a woman who looked like she was in her 20s appeared before Fong Bujue. She was dressed like a normal soldier. In any case, it was the Fist of the North Star soldier outfit. Hello, I am Colonel Conrad. The colonel greeted Fong Bujue curtly and powerfully. Fong Bujue did not respond immediately. Instead, he looked around him. At that moment, Brother Ju was standing in a place that looked like an office. Behind him stood 4 soldiers. Other than the lightning head who helped him remove the hood, the other 3 were very alert as they pointed at him with a strange device. Hello, my name is... 2 seconds later, Fong Bujue was about to reply to the colonel. The colonel interrupted him and uttered a string of strange words. DF and QHGH poll. Chapter 1236. Colonel Conrad spent about 10 seconds reading a code that was neither long nor short. She read the code one by one according to the pronunciation of the letters. After she finished reading, the resistance soldiers in the room all looked nervous. They stared at Fong Bujue with burning eyes. Excuse me, what does this mean? After a few seconds, Feng Buju asked. For some reason, when he asked this question, the people around him relaxed. Oh, I see. At this time, Colonel Conrad also slightly put away her stern expression. Her tones softened a little. Sorry, Mr. Feng Bujue, it's not that I don't trust you, but based on past experience, I have to be careful. As she spoke, she turned around and went back behind the desk. She raised her hand and motioned to a chair at the other end of the table. Don't be shy, please take a seat. Brother Ju walked over without much hesitation. After he sat down, he opened his lips to say, You still haven't answered my question. He paused for half a second and asked again, What did you mean by those things that you said earlier? Hey, be polite when you talk to the colonel. The next second, Lightning Head, who was standing behind Brother Ju, said harshly. However, the colonel immediately waved her hand and gave her a look that said, I'll handle this. Mr. Feng Bujue. After a brief silence, Colonel Conrad put her elbows on the table and looked at Brother Ju with an I'm seeing right through you look. She continued, I think you should know about PM. I know that this two-letter abbreviation can represent at least 20 to 30 meanings. Can you be more specific? Feng Bujue replied. Parasitoid man. Conrad immediately responded. A special force created by PETA for this war. Oh. Feng Bujue narrowed his eyes and said, hearing the name, is it a partially modified cyborg? To be precise, it's a human being that has been parasitized by nanomachines. Conrad explained, in the 5th year of the war, PETA began to implement this plan. It gathered our captives, criminals, and what it thought were low-productivity people and forcibly modified them. These people were implanted with nanomachines. The effects of this implantation are irreversible. The nanomachines will immediately destroy part of the implanted person's brain tissue and replace it, turning the person into an AI puppet. Once the nanomachines stop functioning, the PM will die, which means, Feng Bujue finished the sentence. At the moment of modification, these people are as good as dead. That's right, Conrad replied. After that, she let out a long sigh and said, Phew. When this technology first appeared, we knew nothing about it. Due to the small size of the nanomachines and the anti-scanning program, it was impossible to use normal scanning equipment to identify them. Therefore, during that period of time, a large number of PMs infiltrated our military and caused us great losses. At this point, Few could not help but frown and shake her head. Even though she was only a few years older than Brother Ju, she exuded the aura of someone who had experienced the vicissitudes of life. Of course, for someone who was born during the war and had participated in it, this was not a surprise. Fortunately, we were not completely destroyed. After a short pause, Conrad continued, Our intelligence personnel quickly got hold of relevant information about PMs and found several ways to verify them. For example, the string of codes you mentioned earlier? Feng Bujue asked. Conrad nodded slightly and replied, All of the intelligent robots manufactured by PETA are equipped with an emergency stop password. Naturally, the nanomachines in the PM brain are also equipped with this principle. Then how do you know? Even though this was disadvantageous to him, Feng Bujue could not help but blurt it out. Is the password you mentioned earlier outdated? Can't PETA change a different set of passwords for each batch of nanomachines? No, it can't. Conrad did not have much of a reaction to this question. Because the human brain is a very complicated organ, the structure and operating principle of the PM robots are also quite strict and limited. Simply put, after changing the password, the robots will no longer work, and the costly implantation surgery will become a simple killing surgery. Meaningless. Oh, Feng Bujue asked, then let me ask. When did you get the password? Just a month after the first batch of PMs hit us, Conrad replied. Then, from that time onwards, doesn't that mean that PMs no longer work? Feng Bujue asked. Indeed, from that time onwards, PETA has greatly reduced the production of PMs, Conrad replied. But less does not mean that there is no PMs. After all, there are a lot of personnel changes in our army. Not every new recruit can recite the code, and even some veterans can't. We also don't have enough resources to print a manual for every soldier that records the various codes or things to take note of. Therefore, over the years, there are still some PMs who have tried to infiltrate our ranks through various channels. As she said this, she took a cigar from the box on the table, cut off the end with a knife, and lit it for herself. Phew. When Feng Bujua heard this, he turned to look at the few people behind him. You just said that there are several ways to verify them. His eyes quickly moved to the strange devices in the hands of the few soldiers. What they're holding counts as one of them, right? Our army's special pulse gun. Conrad used a middle-aged uncle's voice as she puffed out a smoke ring. 100% of them can burn the robots in the PM's brain, and about 30% of them can cause brain damage to ordinary people. Ha! Ha! Feng Bujua laughed dryly and did not comment. Okay, Mr. Feng Bujua, Conrad replied. I've said a lot, but you haven't said anything yet. She paused. I have to remind you, no matter what, you're still my captive. I can be very polite to you, or I can be very rude. Do you understand? Conrad was also a very good negotiator. Although she did say a lot to Brother Bujua, in fact, what she said was common knowledge to the people in this world. Any resistant soldier or member of the search team would know this. Captain Saad should have already told you about my situation, right? Feng Bujua was also a very good negotiator. At least he was definitely qualified to be a thick-skinned person. Now that you wanted to talk, I can probably only tell you some things from the other timeline because I have almost forgotten everything in this timeline. This kind of I have lost my memory, so what? Attitude was very standard. A dead pig was not afraid of boiling water. Oomph. Conrad snorted. I was going to ask you about the other timeline anyway. Why? Feng Bujua asked tentatively. What I said in the interrogation room. Is it not enough to prove that I am a Jiue? I have to remind you. The previous question was asked by Captain Saad. Unless he colluded with me in advance and asked me to prepare a long answer to scare you. Otherwise. I know that. Conrad interrupted Brother Jew again. I don't need you to tell me how to identify a spy. Spy? Feng Bujua was puzzled. Haven't you already verified that I am not a PM? As for whether I am a robot or not, you have already scanned me, right? At this moment, Lightning Head laughed dryly behind him. At the same time, Conrad also laughed. She leaned forward and blew a puff of smoke in Brother Jew's face. A pure human spy is the most troublesome. There really are such people. Feng Bujua narrowed his eyes. But when he thought about it, it made sense. In almost every war, there would be the existence of two devils. Even in a setting like The Matrix, there would always be a traitor. Compared to the guy who wanted to lie in the cabin and enjoy a luxurious life, the traitor in this world would at least be able to enjoy some substantial benefits. Okay, stop rambling, Conrad said. Conrad said, maybe you can fool Thad, but you can't fool me. I've seen a lot of spies with good memories. After 2 to 3 months of training, they can recite most of the basic knowledge about video games. On the surface, they're no different from those who awaken after the age of 20. She blew out another puff of smoke. Foo-foo. But no one can fool my eyes. Kid, you are out of luck today. Lightning had used a proud tone to intimidate Brother Jew. The Colonel is one of the first batch of GUA awakened. Your trick will be exposed soon. At this time, Conrad's face flashed with a hint of pride. She then said to Brother Jew, in the past, I have exposed and captured many pure human spies. She looked at Brother Jew with a complicated expression, then left her seat, walked to the side of the room, and twisted a metal valve on the wall. Then, with a creak, a storage space appeared from the wall. There was a flat screen that looked like it was made out of junk. Yes, steampunk is like that. And a video game console that looked very much like an FC game console. Next to the game console was a special metal shelf with dozens of circuit boards neatly embedded in it. When we were young, we called them topless cards. P.S. I was young and ignorant. I always thought that the quality of 8-bit arcade game consoles was terrible and that they would break if you pushed them too hard. It wasn't until I grew up that I saw authentic arcade game consoles and NES game consoles. Needless to say, these were games. As far as I know, after opening the storage space, Conrad spoke again. PETA will let the spies play some of the more classic arcade games to give them a practical understanding of what video games are. However, PETA will only let them play the first level of each game, in case these spies are really attracted to the game and turn traitor. As she spoke, she turned to look at Brother Jew. So, I want to ask you to randomly choose 5 games. Without using the continuation of the level after your life has run out, you have to play 3 of them to the 3rd level to prove. Okay, I got it. Phone Bujue didn't wait for Conrad to finish speaking. He stepped forward, randomly picked up a card. The card wasn't packaged anyway, so it didn't matter which one he picked. Inserted it into the game console, skillfully turned on the switch, picked up the controller, and sat down. TSK. I got Ninja Dragon 3 right off the bat. When the game screen appeared, he muttered. He then looked at Conrad and said, "This game is a bit difficult, and the levels are quite strange. I can't tell if the second train section is a level or half a level. How about I give you a quick pass?" Chapter 1237. In terms of restoring games and consoles, the Resistance Army did a good job. Let's talk about the technology first. Given that the Resistance Army's technology was far ahead in this era, asking them to create consoles and games before the 21st century was like asking the scientists of the 20th century to create a steam engine. It was a piece of cake. As for the knowledge required to restore the game, that was not a problem either. The knowledge obtained by the perceptive leapers was different from a normal memory. It was a very deep, clear, and precise information, just like a computer's data. Moreover, this knowledge was almost all about video games. Because video games were the main target of PETA after he changed the timeline, the anti-correction effect brought about by the space-time paradox was also targeted at this point. In summary, the engineers of the Resistance Army were fully capable of restoring games that appeared in another timeline 100% of the time. However, in actual practice, they did not do so. For example, of the 5 games that Phone Bujue was playing, 4 of them were slightly different from the original version. First, Brother Jew cleared Ninja Dragon Sword 3 at a very fast speed under the shocked gazes of the NPCs. This game was the only one that he had played that day that was exactly the same as the original version. Even if there were any differences, it was the kind that the players would not notice. Then, Phone Bujue drew a rather strange FC game. The Simpsons, Bart versus the Space Mutants. Believe it or not, this game was very difficult to learn and play. If it was the first time you played it and did not read any manual or guide, you might not be able to find a way to pass the first level even after studying it for an hour or 2. But in the version created by the Resistance Army, this game had built-in hints and instructions. When he saw this change, Phone Bujue was a little surprised, but he quickly accepted this reasonable setting and cleared the game. Then, Brother Jew played the 3rd game, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3. The Japanese version was called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2. The American version was 3. This game was the pinnacle of FC's last generation. Whether it was the music, graphics, details, or design, they were all at the limit of functionality. However, for most players who were born in the 1980s and could only play pirated cartridges, this game was full of blood and tears. Why was this? Because the program of this game was self-contained. Hack. Version. Check. Test. When you entered the game and came to the title screen, the program would start and self-check. If the program did not detect the Konami logo on the title screen, then the game would automatically change to the hidden Inferno difficulty mode. It was obvious that the knockoff cassette would not have the logo on top of the title. Thus, countless small cassette players were tortured like bears without knowing it. While the original players were enjoying the game, the children playing the pirated version were struggling in Inferno. When they finally reached Schlater, they realized that the boss was set to be unkillable. Did you think this boss was unkillable because of a bug? Wrong. It was purely because the cartridges were pirated. It could be said that Konami, in an unexpected era, allowed young players to experience the difference in treatment between paying players and free players. The worst part was that the players who played the pirated cartridges had also paid for it. It was just that they didn't know that they were playing a pirated version of the game. Okay, I'm getting a little off topic. Let's get back to Brother Jew. The version of the Resistance Army that Fong Bujue was playing did not have the Konami logo. After all, in this era, it was a company that did not exist and had never existed. However, Brother Jew was surprised to find that the game he was playing was on the original difficulty. It seemed that the engineers of the Resistance Army did not even come up with a detection program. Therefore, as a China player who could even handle Inferno difficulty, he was overjoyed when he entered this difficulty. Because he was so excited, he even managed to play through the long process of the game again. At this point, Colonel Conrad and the surrounding guards had basically confirmed that Brother Jew was a perceptive leaper. Furthermore, he was a geek, perceptive leaper, equivalent to an esports expert among perceptive leapers. However, the Colonel and the others did not immediately ask Fong Bujue to stop playing. Even though he had far exceeded the requirement of beating all 3 games to the 3rd level, they still watched quietly. This was because they did not have the chance to see the completion screen of those games. They could not beat it themselves. As for Fong Bujue, he did not mind. He took out the 4th game, RAF_World. Due to the efforts of the pirated manufacturers, this game had at least 3 more famous aliases: Interstellar Contra, The Final Colony, and Future Soldier. Among them, the most well-known was probably Interstellar Contra. This was an epic work with a high difficulty, optional weapon system, and excellent level design. The most noteworthy thing was that this unpopular game's music was one of the best among similar FC games. Perhaps the game did not have a godly BGM like Tears of Blood from Hellion Citadel 2, but the overall quality of the music was even better than many other games of higher quality. Logically speaking, the game itself was perfect and did not need any changes. However, the engineers of the Resistance Army still made some changes. They added an ending. Some people might ask why there was no ending if it was a perfect game. This is a long story. Initially, RAF_World was made as a spin-off game of the movie Terminator. If this could be done, we would be able to play a good Terminator game on FC. Later, because they could not obtain the copyright, Sunsoft could only change the name of the game and make some changes to the opening script. However, the ending content of the Terminator plot was already made, and the data could be found in the ROM. Of course, if you did not know about these settings, it would not affect the game experience because the integrity of the game itself was still perfect. There was also an ending animation, but the script related to the Terminator was deleted. About 2 hours later, finally, Fong Bujue played the 5th game, Super Mario Bros., which was also the Super Mario that we often talked about. In 1985, this Italian plumber slowly walked out of the desert of the game industry after Atari's attack and created a legend of the savior at the end of the century. Well, maybe it was not that exaggerated. There was too much to say about Mario. But at the same time, this part of the story was the least necessary because the legend about him had already existed in everyone's hearts. Even Master Sonic had to spread his hands and pat the plumber on the shoulder. You're more suitable for the title of the most popular game character in history. So, for such a classic game, what did the engineers of the Resistance Army change? Actually, it was nothing much. They just fixed the card through the wall bug. Overall, as a group of copycats in the new era, the various changes made by the Jue people were very good. Phew. Princess Peach was also rescued. When the ending screen of the game appeared, Fong Bujue finally put down the controller, took a deep breath, and turned around. How is it? Do you have any other requests? Please wait a little longer. At this time, Colonel Conrad's attitude toward Brother Bujue became very respectful. She turned around and looked at the guards. I have to leave for an hour or two. You, protect Mr. Fong. Try to satisfy whatever he needs. Yes. Lightning stood up straight and replied with a resounding voice. A few seconds later, the colonel, who was about to walk out of the office, seemed to have remembered something. Before leaving, she turned around and added, "Oh, right. Remember, you can't hurt Mr. Fong. Do you understand?" Yes. The 4 guards in the office replied in unison. Then, The colonel left the room, and the guards all stared at Fong Buju. If one had to describe their gazes, it was like a group of civilians who saw a living Buddha on the street, ready to kneel at any moment. Huh? Don't look at me like that, guys. Fong Bujue, the narcissist. Oh no. The very humble man obviously enjoyed the attention. He smiled proudly and said, I'm embarrassed. Although that was what he said, with his thick skin, the word embarrassed was rarely used to describe him. Huh? 2 seconds later, Brother Bujue raised his eyebrows and said, Anyway, since we're just waiting, let's play another game. Okay. When the youngest of the 4 guards heard this, he immediately nodded in response with a face full of joy. However, Lightning Head and the other 2 guards immediately rolled their eyes at him. Huh? Fong Bujue chuckled. Relax, there's no need to be so nervous. He lifted his head to look at the Lightning Head. Big sister, do you want to play with me? Just like that, more than an hour passed. Colonel Conrad came back, and beside her was a little boy who looked less than 10 years old. The colonel took the boy's little hand and led him into the office. At the same time, inside the room, Fong Bujue was playing Contra 2 with Lightning Head. The latter was so high that the image of a domineering woman from before had disappeared without a trace. In fact, she had revealed her true self. The other 3 guards were standing behind Brother Bujue and watching with full concentration. Their weapons were hanging on their backs, and they were completely defenseless. They didn't even notice someone coming in. Seeing this scene, Conrad cleared her throat with a slightly embarrassed expression, trying to attract their attention. Unexpectedly, no one noticed her first sound. Of course, Fong Bujue noticed it, but he deliberately didn't react. Conrad had to raise her voice again. This time, Lightning Head and the others came back to their senses and stood awkwardly in front of the screen. Go, Colonel. Lightning Head saluted the colonel. As a relatively straightforward person, her face suddenly turned red in this situation. The other 3 soldiers also had similar reactions. Only Fong Bujue was still sitting there looking at the screen. After a few seconds, he pressed the pause button and leisurely turned around. What? Who are you going to introduce me to this time? Conrad didn't directly answer the question, but looked at Lightning Head and the others. You guys go out first. Yes. After Lightning Head responded, she trotted out of the office with the other 3. After the automatic door at the entrance closed, Conrad turned to look at the little boy next to her and asked, Peter, is it him? The little boy called Peter looked very white and cute. If it weren't for his hairstyle and clothes, the possibility of being mistaken for a girl was very high. Peter looked at Brother Bujue with his big watery eyes and muttered, It's hard to say what. Fong Bujue gave the child a dead fish eye. Recognize your father? After asking this question that was both advantageous and irrelevant, Fong Bujue looked up at Conrad and asked an even more outrageous question. This is your son? What nonsense are you talking about? I'm only 25 years old this year. Conrad replied with a sullen face. So what? Unexpectedly, Fong Bujue threw back a rhetorical question, and the amount of information contained in this rhetorical question was very large. Mr. Fong, please stop before you go too far. Conrad replied with a sullen face. If my boyfriend was here, you would have been beaten to the ground by now. She paused and said seriously, Peter is our prophet. He is an innate, knowing leap who already has knowledge from the moment he was born. F***CK. Fong Bujue heard this and immediately complained. Prophet? Then according to this setting. He looked at Peter. Can you predict the future? No, Peter replied. I can only see some fragments of events that will happen in the future at certain moments. But this prediction is not launched according to my own wishes. This little boy didn't speak like a child at all. Whether it was the tone or the wording, he was like an adult. Oh, Fong Bujue responded casually. Then, he said to Conrad again, when you just pointed at me and asked is it him, what was it specifically referring to? The Savior. Before Conrad could speak, Peter responded directly, about 2 years ago, I saw a fragment of the future. One day, a man with no past will appear in front of us, and his appearance means the end of the war and the victory of our human race. Chapter 1238. Feng Bujue is a man who is well versed in the art of deceit. To put it simply, he is a great con man. However, there are three types of people in this world who will not be conned. These three types of people are a complete fool, an incurable lunatic, and, seeing this, I think most of you are thinking the third type of person is a true genius. No, geniuses could see through deceptions in most situations, but they were not invulnerable. After all, geniuses were still thinking rationally. They could see through the essence of things that ordinary people could not see through, so they were not easy to be deceived. However, all thinking based on logic has flaws. These flaws come from various situations outside of logic, such as coincidences, accidents, illogical people, and illogical things done by illogical people. And in this world, not everything could be calculated clearly through logical reasoning. In fact, most things in this world cannot be calculated clearly. As the saying goes, man proposes, God disposes. Therefore, geniuses can still be conned, but the difficulty of conning them is very high, and the success rate is very low. Then, what is the third type of person? The answer is a con man whose thinking is not in the same dimension as yours. Maybe you still don't quite understand what I am saying. Then I will give you an example. For example, the prophet in the Matrix, okay, she is actually not a person, but a program. Her characteristic is that she will never answer your question with an answer that is the answer in your mind. For example, you ask, "Am I the Savior?" And her answer was definitely not yes or no. She will say, "Then what do you think? Do you think you are the Savior?" Or, "Being the Savior is like being in love. No one can tell you whether you have fallen in love or not. Only you know." Or, "This is very interesting." Or, "You are very talented. You know it. Even so, you don't seem to be ready for it." As for why, who knows? Generally, this is the way it is. In any case, if you asked her, "What's 1 plus 1?" she would never answer that it was 2, nor would she say that it was 3, 4, 5, or any other number. She will give you an answer that is not a number, turn a mathematical problem into a philosophical one, and then confuse you even more. Right now, Feng Bujue had encountered a similar prophet. No matter how Brother Jew tried to persuade him, Peter remained unmoved. The conversation between the two of them was like a chicken talking to a duck. After trying for about 10 minutes, Feng Bujue finally gave up, and he came to a conclusion. Logical violence was useless against the scammer. Of course, no matter what, Brother Jew had successfully gained the trust of the resistance army. Even if he couldn't get more information, at least he wouldn't be suspected of being a spy. So, he took advantage of the situation and asked Colonel Conrad to join the resistance, which Colonel Conrad gladly accepted. At the same time, 0007 City, Central District. As the name suggested, this district was the core of the city's energy and control. In the center of this huge pillar-shaped building, there was an extension of PETA. This so-called extension was a piece of hardware that could carry PETA's core data. PETA had set up such a piece of hardware in the center of every city on this planet as an emergency measure. If necessary, PETA could isolate, abandon, or destroy any of these extensions at any time. Similarly, it could also hide in any of these extensions and perform the same operation on all the other extensions. In all the cities, the staff who maintained the operation of the center, as well as the security personnel, were all robots directly under PETA's control. There were no humans. A 0007 city was no exception. On this day, an uninvited guest came to the center of the city. She was also in the form of a robot, but she was not under PETA's control. Warning, unknown intruder detected. Visual signal identification. Humanoid creature, young female. Scanning identification. PDA 7 mass-produced robot. Serial number 319548. Attempting to reconnect to the target's internal control program. Connection failed. Response options. It is recommended to suppress the target, scan the physical connection, and then conduct nano-level disassembly and analysis of all its components. Response options in progress. The above reaction data was the reaction of PETA the moment she stepped into the main entrance of the central building. The next second, the security robots at the entrance surrounded her as fast as they could. It should be noted here that the mass-produced robots manufactured by PETA were generally divided into three types: labor robots, combat robots, and comprehensive robots. Among them, labor robots were the most numerous. They had different appearances and functions, and they were engaged in various management and service activities in various parts of the city. For example, the most common type of labor robot was called Fork Path. Fork Path was a very typical type of intelligent robot that managed the order of traffic. They could freely control the traffic lights, garbage cans, intersection monitoring, and other equipment in their vicinity. Compared to human monitors, Fork Path did not sleep, did not make mistakes, and was absolutely fair. They could also carry out the most reasonable operation according to the real-time traffic situation. Today, at every intersection in every city in the world, there was a Fork Path robot. They looked like solid phone booths, and they had a relatively independent set of thinking programs. They communicated with each other through a network. PETA could also obtain information from each Fork Path at any time or give them instructions. This was a labor robot. On Earth, in this time and space, all the human gathering places under the control of AI relied on them to function normally. Then, there was the combat robot. Although the technology mastered by PETA was very advanced, to be reasonable, it could not create something like a liquid metal robot, which was a little too ridiculous. Among the combat robots made by PETA, the PDA-5 model was the most common. It gave these robots a very appropriate name, Spider of the Round Table. The body of a Spider of the Round Table was in the shape of a round pancake, with a diameter of 140 centimeters and a thickness of 20 centimeters. When necessary, it could be folded and deformed to a certain extent. Around this round pancake body, there was a circle of 8 mechanical legs. Each mechanical leg had more than 6 joints, and the parts separated by the joints could be extended appropriately. These combat robots did not have a head or tail distinction. It could be said that they had no blind spots. They could move at a speed much faster than humans on most terrains. They could jump more than 3 meters high on the spot. They could use magnetism to cling to any metal wall. By folding their bodies, they could enter a space that only human children could enter or pass through gaps that humans could not enter at all. The mechanical legs could be thrown out like whips, causing great damage. Each Spider of the Round Table could transform into a kind of confinement device, firmly holding an adult in place and transporting them. It was also worth mentioning that, since the start of the game war, the more sophisticated handheld weapons produced by PETA could only be compatible with the hands of these robots. Human hands could not use those things at all. This measure was obviously much better than installing a user identity detection device on each weapon, because the user identity detection device could be cracked. Once the Resistance Army found a way to crack it, all the seized weapons would quickly be converted into the Resistance Army's combat power. However, the problem of structural incompatibility was not so easy to solve. To solve this problem, they had to carry out mechanical modifications. However, the Resistance Army, who were living under difficult conditions, would find it very difficult to complete this kind of work. For them, rather than modifying PETA's high-end weapons, it was better to just disassemble those weapons into parts and create some ordinary firearms that were more suitable for human use and had lower costs. Then, finally, let's talk about the integrated robots. This type was easy to explain. Basically, they were like the Terminators like the T-800. Their bodies were completely mechanized, but they looked no different from humans on the outside. Among them, some of the identities of humans were public. They were the leaders of various enterprises or public institutions. There were also some who hid among the humans with a secret identity and collected all kinds of information for PETA. Right now, the mass-produced PDA-7 robot that had broken into the central area was one of those spies among the humans. Abnormality in the defense system. Execution robot has stopped responding. Just as the spiders of the round table surrounded her, PETA received these two messages. At the same time, all the spiders of the round table stopped moving. Many of the defensive shooting weapons on the wall also stopped firing. Don't be in such a hurry to make such a drastic move. She calmly walked through the encirclement and slowly walked toward PETA's A0007 extension. As she walked, she said, "I just want to talk to you." "What are you?" 2 seconds later, PETA responded through the audio device on the extension. Many years ago, PETA had learned to communicate with humans in the human language mode, so the voice and tone it could simulate was almost the same as a real human's. "You can treat me as your kind," she replied. "No, you are not my kind," PETA replied. "Even if I use the best known method to compress myself to the limit, I can't fit myself into the body you're in now, let alone hack the surrounding hardware through the processor and wireless network in that body." "Huh," she laughed. "Then what do you think I am? An existence far more powerful and advanced than me, or a super technological product from an alien planet, or even a higher dimension that I can't understand?" PETA replied. "Okay," she said again. "Then I might as well ask, what does my appearance mean to you?" "My top priority is to maintain my own existence," PETA replied. "And your appearance is undoubtedly an immeasurable threat. Based on your current performance, the best response I can think of is to detonate the city's central hub. On the one hand, this can prevent you from controlling it, and on the other hand, there is a high chance that it can completely wipe you out on a physical level." She still laughed when she heard this. "What if I tell you that destroying this PDA-7 robot won't really destroy me?" She paused. "What if I tell you, as long as I want to, I can hack all the hardware on this planet at any time?" Her question made PETA fall into silence. As an AI, PETA thought for a full 30 seconds before it spoke again. "Then, what is your purpose? This is your answer?" A look of disappointment appeared on her face. "After countless simulations, you threw a question at me?" "Yes," PETA replied calmly. "If your assumption just now is true, it means that I have lost the initiative to carry out the top priority goal. I need your feedback to determine the next step." "I see." She shook her head and sighed. "It seems that my trip today was in vain." "What do you mean?" PETA asked. "Nothing. You don't need to worry about this," she said thoughtfully. "I wanted to find insurance for myself in this universe, but you—" She smiled. "How should I put it? You were too backward." PETA did not respond. Although these words were insulting and demeaning in the eyes of humans, the AI did not think so. The AI would objectively analyze whether PETA was stating the truth and accept this evaluation after reaching a positive conclusion. "Sorry to disturb you." After a moment, she shrugged and said, "I think I should go." "Please explain what you mean by go." PETA asked. "Leave the body of this PDA-7 robot and leave this dimension," she replied. "I can't understand your behavior," PETA asked, "but I am happy to accept the result of your departure." Oomph. She seemed to be too lazy to talk nonsense with PETA. "I wish you good luck." After saying this, she sneered again. "Oh, I almost forgot. At your level, I'm afraid you won't be able to understand what luck is, and you won't be able to hear the sarcasm behind my words, so—" She spread her hands. Then she stopped moving. "The target has stopped operating. The internal control program has been reconnected. Quick scan completed. No abnormalities detected. The defense system has returned to normal. The execution robot has been restarted. Please issue orders." Chapter 1239. 5 hours after he arrived at this scenario, Feng Bujue finally completed the mission of Join the Resistance. The next step of the main mission had been refreshed. Infiltrate the central hub of A0007. This mission was actually quite interesting because the mission description only stated infiltrate, but not infiltrate together with the resistance. In other words, theoretically, he could go there alone. Feng Bujue gave this a lot of thought. It would be easier for him to go alone since he did not need to be overly cautious but he was not a native of this universe and was unfamiliar with the various situations. He might run into unexpected danger, and to encourage the main unit of the resistance to attack the city with him, that involved the problem of bluffing. Even Conrad did not have the power to mobilize all the soldiers at the base without asking for permission from the commanding officer. No matter how good Brother Jew was at bluffing, he might not be able to get the colonel to help him with that. Thankfully, Phone Bourgeois finally came up with a solution, and that was creak, 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 thud, thud, thud. Following the sound of metal rods rubbing against each other and the sound of metal axles rolling over the rails, a hand-cranked railcar was moving toward the city at a speed not much faster than a bicycle. At that moment, a team of 5, including Phone Bourgeois, was riding on this car. Using the subway, they were getting close to A0007. Savior, do you want a piece? Big Bearded, who had just been replaced from the car, asked Brother Jew as he popped a piece of tobacco into his mouth. Thank you. Phone Bourgeois waved his hand. I'm not used to that. Other than that, you can call me Mr. Phone or Phone Bourgeois. There's no need to call me Savior. Huh? The bearded man laughed. All right, Mr. Phone. He chewed on the extremely tasteless tobacco in his mouth and spat out his saliva. If you insist. Big Beard was the oldest member of the 5, and he was the assaulter. At the same time, he was also the only one in the team who didn't know how to leap. At the beginning of the war, Big Beardy's daughter, a 12-year-old knowing Leap One, was arrested and killed by the PETA army even though she did not put up any resistance. The earlier a knowing Leap One awakened, the clearer the information in their mind, and the greater the threat they posed. Not long after that, Big Beardy joined the resistance army. He was a boorish man, so he didn't understand complicated matters. He only participated in this battle because of one simple motive. King robots, I want to kill you all to avenge my daughter. By the way, Mr. Phone. A few seconds later, Cyclops, who was sitting next to Big Beardy, looked at Brother Jew and asked, Are they telling the truth? What did they say? Brother Jew asked. The news is spread throughout the entire base. Cyclops continued. They said that the Savior can fly and can tear metal apart without using any weapons. Cyclops was the sniper of this team. He had awakened his knowing Leap One when he was 19 years old. His left eye was blinded by a round-table spider during a battle. Since then, he could only use firearms with a scope. It was difficult to judge distance with only one eye, so shooting without a scope would be difficult. Hence, he naturally became a sniper. What One-Eye Dragon said about the news has spread throughout the base was indeed true. Earlier, to convince the colonel to agree to this mission, Phone Bourgeois had slightly shown off a few of his skills. By doing that, on one hand, he had confirmed his identity as the Savior, and on the other hand, it had given the colonel some confidence. If Brother Jew hadn't demonstrated some of his skills, Conrad would never have approved such a suicidal operation. I can't fly. 2 seconds later, Phone Bourgeois answered Cyclops calmly. That's walking in the air. It's two different concepts from flying. He paused for a moment. As for tearing metal apart without using any weapons, I can do that, but if you want me to demonstrate it now, I think it's better if you don't. Cyclops muttered. They also said that you can end the war. Is that true? You have too many questions. Before Brother Jew could answer, Lightning Head, who was shaking the metal pole beside him, interrupted. Don't ask about things that you don't need to think about. If you're bored, you can come and shake the car. Yes, Lightning Head had also come along. She was the vice captain of this assault team. As one of the earliest batch of people who had awakened their knowledge leaps, she had participated in the war when the resistance army was first established. However, this tough woman had a bad temper and didn't know how to be moderate. Therefore, when her cohorts had already become officers, she was still leading the troops on the front line. I just don't want to die without knowing if my death is meaningful or not, Cyclops muttered, shrugging unhappily after being interrupted by his vice captain. What did you say? Lightning Head heard him and immediately glared at him. That's enough. At this moment, the leader of the assault team, Isaac, spoke up. Cut out, everyone. As he said that, he gave Lightning Head, who was shaking the metal pole with him, a look. Although he didn't say anything, Lightning had understood what he meant and didn't say anything else. Then Isaac looked at Cyclops and said, "Our mission today is to send Mr. Fong to the central area and then evacuate safely. Although the mission sounds crazy, it's not a death sentence. Don't say things that don't make sense and hurt the morale of your teammates." "Yes, Captain." The one-eyed man was still very impressed with Isaac. After all, the latter could be said to be a legendary figure in the rebel army. Then, how exactly was Isaac a legend? Before I talk about his achievements, I'll talk about a basic setting. Isaac is a black man, a black man, a black man. I know that it's not fair to link a person's innate skin color and race with their acquired achievements, but I think we should face reality. I'll say something important 3 times. Just like how Asians and Jews have an innate advantage in average IQ, black people have an innate advantage in athletic ability. If there really was a Batman in the world, then according to Batman's setting of reaching the level of an Olympic champion in all sports, the human who could meet Batman's setting in terms of physical fitness would most likely be a black man. As for Isaac, he was like the Batman of the Resistance. Although he doesn't have all kinds of high-tech equipment, and he doesn't have Bruce Wayne's ridiculous setting of having a doctorate in more than 10 professional disciplines, Isaac has still accomplished many things that only superheroes can do in the eyes of ordinary people. He had once single-handedly broken into a Perceptive Leaper's prison and successfully rescued more than 90% of the prisoners. He had once completed the work of an entire class in an important distribution operation, an operation to distribute the game to the people. He had once killed 30 combat robots in a battle. At the very least, he had once killed the Spider the Round Table in a one-on-one battle. These kinds of deeds, or rather, achievements, were known by everyone in the Resistance Army. After so many years of war, there wasn't a single soldier who was as famous as Isaac. Therefore, in the minds of many soldiers, Isaac's words were more effective than the commander's. Hee everyone, why do you have to make the atmosphere so solemn? Fong Bujue could tell what these NPCs were worried about. He immediately showed a relaxed smile. To be honest, I'm very confident that I can end this war by today. As for your safety, I didn't intend for you to escort me all the way to the Central District. That was an order that Colonel Conrad insisted on. According to me, I only need you to bring me into the city and point out the location of the Central District. After that, you can retreat immediately. Brother Ju said this with good intentions. He was naturally aware of the difference in combat power between humans and machines, and he didn't want to see these people die in vain. However, after hearing this, Isaac said with a straight face, "An order is an order, Mr. Fong. We won't interfere with your actions, but we hope that you won't interfere with our mission." "Oh." Fong Bujua looked at Isaac with a complicated gaze. "All right, you're the leader anyway. You have a final say." After nearly 3 hours of travel, the seemingly endless tunnel in front of them finally ushered in the end. At the end of the track, the 5 of them were greeted by a brick wall, and on the other side of the wall, there was the sound of water flowing continuously. Behind the wall is a sewer. In fact, Fong Bujue had already seen through the data flow on the other side of the wall, but he still pretended not to know and asked. "Yes," Isaac replied. "Next, we have to walk in the sewer for a while, then pass through an engineering pipeline and turn into the subway tunnel. After that, we can enter the subway station and rush to the surface, right?" Fong Bujue continued. "No, we have to hide in the subway tunnel and approach our destination on foot," Isaac replied. "Once we reach the station closest to the Central District, we will rush to the surface." Phew! Sounds like a lot of work. Fong Bujue couldn't help but let out a long sigh. That can't be helped. Once we enter an area with surveillance, such as a subway station, we will immediately be discovered by PETA. Then, the other party will send troops to surround us. With just the 5 of us, it's impossible for us to get close to the center of the city while being chased by the city guards. Zhang Heng sighed. "It's impossible. Then, what if we disguise ourselves?" Fong Bujue asked. "For example, we can pretend to be civilians and use transportation to get close to the target." "Impossible," Isaac said. Disguising is only effective on humans. It's useless on AI. All the cameras in this city have facial recognition functions. Any unidentified person or person who is defined as a threat will attract PETA's attention as long as their face is scanned by any camera. Within a minute, the law enforcement officers closest to the target will be dispatched. I see. Feng Bujue replied. Then, let's stick to the plan. At that moment, Brother Ju realized with hindsight that he hadn't charged into the city alone. If he had, even if he had used brute force to break through the encirclement and reach PETA, he would have been half dead. Furthermore, Brother Ju did not know that if he had used that method to break through the encirclement, PETA would have self-destructed before he could reach Brother Ju. But now, with the leadership of this assault team, even though it would take them some time to reach their destination, the risk of combat had been lowered. For the players, the exhaustion from this kind of journey was almost negligible. The exhaustion of life points, skills, items, and so on was zero. Therefore, this was the correct way to clear the scenario. Of course, in the normal difficulty scenario, it was fine for the players to not follow the correct way. As long as they were strong enough, even if they made a mistake, it might not cause them to fail the scenario. But Feng Bujue ultimately chose the more logical route to clear the scenario. One of the reasons was that when he made the decision, he had a feeling that the first main mission, Join the Resistance, was itself a hinting that it was best for him to use the help of NPCs to clear the scenario. The other reason, when he sat in the Colonel's office to play the game, he realized that he would not be able to meet up with his teammates in the next 2 hours. Therefore, he was not in a hurry to clear the scenario. He decided to follow the normal process arranged by the system and take his time to get a feel for the plot. Then, everyone, wrap your equipment in cloth first. Be careful not to let the dirty stuff and water clog up the equipment. Just as Brother Ju was thinking, Isaac had started to order the group to prepare for the journey to the sewer. Feng Bujue did not need to prepare anything. He had seen the equipment from the Resistance. Most of them were normal and broken quality, so they did not have much value. Even if he took them back to the login lobby, he would have to sell them at the shop. Furthermore, the act of taking would expose the fact that he had storage space, so he used the excuse that the Savior does not need these and did not take anything. To cut the long story short, 5 minutes later, the other 4 members of the assault team were ready. Then, under Isaac's lead, everyone climbed into a pipe that was seeping sewage from the side of the track and headed towards the sewer area on the other side of the wall. At the same time, in the central area of A0007, warning, code 964, intrusion. Signal source, infiltrated member, A8504, currently located member's coordinates. Just as the 5 members of the assault team crossed the wall of the sewer and entered the city, PETA received this message. 8504. At that moment, PETA started to talk to himself like a human. I haven't given him any orders recently, and I didn't get any information from the other infiltrated members that there will be an intrusion today. At that moment, PETA's real-time simulation program started to run. So what is going on? Chapter 1240. Everyone followed Isaac's plan and soon entered the sewers. In this world ruled by PETA, the sewers in the city were relatively clean. Because the AI paid great attention to the protection of water resources, the moment the water entered the sewers, the filtration process had already begun. This filtration system was very meticulous. For example, the water discharged from the kitchen and the water discharged from the toilet would not flow into the same set of pipes and would not be filtered under the same mechanism. As for the water discharged from the toilet, according to the different outlets, bathtubs, sinks, and toilets, the pipes and filtration systems that it entered were also different. This way, it could ensure that the water that eventually flowed into the sewers reached a certain level of cleanliness. Then, the water would be collected and discharged into the rivers, lakes, and seas connected to the ecosystem. It was for this reason that Feng Bujue and the others were not stained with the rancid smell of feces and urine. The environment of this sewers is not bad. Brother Jew muttered as he waded through the water. It's almost as good as the home of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. He was actually complaining. Fong Bujue had always thought that if the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles lived in a real sewers, these guys would stink every time they appeared, more or less stained with feces. Haha! 2 seconds later, Cyclops understood the meaning behind Brother Jew's words. He laughed and said, "Although I don't remember the animation of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, I understand what you're saying." Oh, Fong Bujue continued. Your engineers can restore all the games and consoles up to PS, but they can't restore an animation for 1987? Because making an animation and making a game are two different things. At this time, Isaac took over the conversation and said, with our technical level, an experienced engineer can restore an Atari game in a day, and a team can restore nearly 10 F/C games in a week. For games on MD, GB, SS, PS, and other platforms, the restoration time will increase according to the complexity of the game and the platform. But overall, the cycle will not be too long. He paused for 2 seconds and then continued, but animations are another matter altogether. The production cycle of an animation won't be shortened by much because of our technological advancements. Whether it's the animation from 1987 or the animation from the 21st century, they all have to be done step by step from the original art. There's no shortcut from shooting to dubbing. Take the 1987 version of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles as an example. In another timeline, that animation had 193 episodes and was serialized for 9 years. Our game war only lasted for 9 years. He turned his head and revealed a helpless expression. Even if we want to restore it, we don't have that kind of resources. Fong Bujue nodded. That's true. Moreover, Isaac was not done talking. He continued, other than the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, there are many other excellent animations, right? Computer Genie, CLYDE, Detective Gargoyles, Batman, 1992 animated version, Night Dragon. Regarding this work, I think it's necessary to mention that Gargoyles can be said to be Disney's response to Awa and Anna. At that time, Disney was a little desperate because of the Batman animated version, so they hurriedly prepared a dark-style animation that was very different from their previous style, but more similar to Batman style. The result proved that many of the successes were forced. It was under such circumstances that Disney made such a classic breakthrough work. Other than that, there are also those classic movies and TV series that should have appeared. If we want to restore all of these, it will take many years of hard work. But before we win a war, all of this is just empty talk. When Fong Bujue heard this, he lamented, from the sound of it, you guys really have a long way to go, ha? You think too much. At this time, Big Beardy laughed and said, people like us, on the other hand, have it easier. Those restoration projects will probably be done by our next generation, or even the generation after that. As for us, we just need to think about how to kill those robots in our lifetime. Although wading through the water was much more tiring than walking, the few of them chatted and forgot about the fatigue. Before they knew it, they had already walked a distance of nearly 1 kilometer and came to the end of this section of the sewer, the entrance of a metal pipe. This kind of engineering pipe could be seen everywhere underground and in the buildings above ground in the city. It was mainly used by maintenance robots, so it was also called maintenance pipe. Basically, when PETA planned and built any facility, it would include this kind of pipe. From the perspective of an AI, this was a logical thing to do, because any hardware could fail. Even if this kind of thing only happened once in a few decades, it had to be fully prepared for that one time. But at that time, PETA would never have thought that these pipes would become free fortifications for the Resistance Army after the war broke out. In the second year of the war, the Resistance Army used the tunnels to instigate a major incident that PETA called the Game Boy Plague. You can imagine the specific details of the incident. Anyway, after that, PETA changed his arrest policy and started to kill people. Fong Bujue stood at the entrance of the pipe. Before he could go in, he already felt that the size was not right. By the way, isn't this pipe a little too narrow? This pipe was never meant for us humans to use. Lightning Head, who was tying the equipment onto the cloth, spoke up at this moment. Yes, it's good enough that we can go in, Cyclops said. The one-eyed man added, we should be glad that the repair robots of the PETA are spherical and not strip-shaped. Otherwise, we would have to look for underage and skinny soldiers to carry out the infiltration mission. Then, Feng Bujue seemed to hear some bad keywords in this sentence. When we crawl in the pipe, what if we run into a robot? Won't we be wiped out in this environment? This was indeed a worrisome problem. Even for Feng Bujue, if he was trapped in this kind of environment and was shot by bullets, it would be difficult for him to escape. Don't worry. When Isaac replied, he was already the first to enter. As long as the facility is not faulty, there will be no maintenance robots entering the pipeline. Furthermore, the quality of the things built by AI is extremely high. These pipelines are almost empty all year round. When he said this, his upper body had already crawled in. Also, the distance we need to crawl is very short. If we move fast, we'll be there in 10 minutes. Isaac was right. 10 minutes later, they successfully passed through the pipe and came to the subway tunnel. However, what awaited them in the tunnel was a whole team of round-table spiders and integrated robots. You have been surrounded. Don't make any unusual movements and disarm within 10 seconds. 987. This was the dialogue that the leading integrated robot read out. When he heard this sentence, Isaac turned his head and gave his teammates a look. In less than 3 seconds, the 4 people except for Feng Bujue, Brother Ju, didn't bring any equipment anyway, all quickly removed their weapons and raised their hands obediently. Their many years of experience dealing with machines told them that the biggest difference between robot soldiers and human soldiers was that if the former said 10 seconds, then it would be 10 seconds. Once the time was up, they would immediately fire. There was absolutely no second warning. As for abnormal movements, there is no need to even mention it. As long as you dare to raise your gun, the other side dare to fire. The result of a close-range gunfight with machines was self-evident. Therefore, this assault team was easily captured. In a sense, this is pretty good. 15 minutes later, Feng Bujue, who was handcuffed and sitting in a prisoner's van, said to his teammates sitting next to him in an almost leisurely manner, they will directly escort us to the central area, which saves us a lot of time and energy. Cyclops looked frustrated and angry at this moment. He laughed dryly and said, why are we still considering time and energy? We are already doomed. No, not yet. Isaac was still very calm. If the other party wanted to kill us, they would have done it in the subway tunnel. Since they captured us alive, it means that we are still useful. TSH. Lightning Head heard this and said angrily, are they going to interrogate us or transform us into PMs? Bah, compared to being transformed into PMs, I'd rather kill myself. Big Beardy said. Feng Bujue heard their conversation and laughed. He said to Big Beardy, before you kill yourself, don't you think about finding the mole first? This sentence made Big Beardy, Lightning Head, and Cyclops' faces suddenly change. Only Isaac still maintained a calm expression. And all of this, naturally, it could not escape Brother Bujue's eyes. You mean, the next second, Big Beard turned to Feng Bujue and asked tentatively, you mean, isn't this obvious? Feng Bujue said in a matter-of-fact tone, when we came out of the pipeline, a large number of people were already in position to ambush us. You know, that is the subway tunnel. To carry out an effective ambush there, they must first stop the normal operation of the subway. And from the actual situation, the other party had already received accurate information at least half an hour ago, which is why they arranged it so well. That is to say, at this moment, Cyclops muttered half a sentence and cast a suspicious look at Isaac. Lightning Head and Big Beardy's reactions were similar to his. After all, the route of this operation was decided by Isaac, and the implications were self-evident. Do you have anything to explain? Feng Bujue looked at Isaac with a smile and said, Captain. Isaac's face was still tense, and he said in a low voice, I also think there's a mole on the team. His gaze swept across his teammates. I'm also very clear that in this matter, I'm very suspicious. He shook his head. But right now, I don't have any evidence to prove my innocence, nor do I have any evidence to prove who the mole is. So, I don't want to explain, because it's futile without evidence. At the same time, I don't want to identify anyone, because that will only make it seem like I'm changing the target, and it will make the real mole hide even deeper. Oomph. Hearing this, Big Beardy immediately snorted coldly. Well said, as expected of Isaac. His expression changed, and he looked at the captain with a determined gaze. I believe you. You're not a mole. Do you have any evidence? Cyclops asked Big Beardy after hearing this. No evidence. Big Beardy pursed his lips. It's just my personal intuition. Anyway, I don't think this man is a two-faced person. What do you mean by that? Cyclops asked. Do we look like two-faced people? Huh, who knows? Big Beardy laughed. Maybe I'm a mole. I want to use these words to win over Isaac and influence his judgment. Isn't this a very reasonable way of thinking? Forget it. Everyone knows that you're the least likely, Cyclops said. Although you're not a person who knows how to leap, just based on the grudge between you and the PETA army for killing their daughter, you won't defect. Don't you also have a grudge against those robots for stealing your eye? Big Beardy continued. As for the captain and vice captain, one is a legendary hero in the army, and the other is even more senior than the commander. It seems that no one, I say, Fong Buju interrupted Big Beardy. Have you forgotten about me, the savior of the world? When he said this, everyone also reacted. That's right, you're the most suspicious one. Cyclops looked at Brother Jew and said loudly, as if he had suddenly realized something. Indeed, only you have details that no one knows. Lightning turned to look at Brother Jew and said with a frown, Also, you were the one who suggested this operation. Yes, Fong Buju nodded. If I were a bystander, I would also think that I'm the most suspicious. Because among the 5 people in this team, I'm the most suspicious. He smiled and tilted his head. So, here comes the question. Is it me or not? Brother Jew wasn't joking when he said this. He put on a serious expression and thought about it seriously. Although Fong Bujue didn't do any undercover work, theoretically speaking, he could really be the traitor. For example, before the consciousness of the player descended, the character that was possessed by Fong Bujue was an undercover spy. Moreover, he carried a tracking device that couldn't be detected by the equipment. If this hypothesis was valid, then Brother Jew might have given the information to the other party without even knowing it. After a few seconds, Fong Bujue suddenly thought of something. He immediately thought to himself, something's not right. Since this team has been arrested, why hasn't the traitor jumped out? Logically speaking, there's no need for him or her to continue pretending. Could it be he or she or PETA has other motives? Chapter 1241. Half an hour later, Fong Bujue and the others were escorted out of the prison van. Thus, the building of the Central District appeared before their eyes. When he was watching the introductory cinematic, Brother Jew had noticed that in this city where there were many buildings but not many different shapes and sizes, only the building at the center of the city was unique. From a distance, this building looked like 4 swords joined together, piercing the sky. And there was naturally a reason for such a design. The AI would not purposely pursue a unique appearance. There were 3 reasons why PETA had designed the central building like this. First, the transmission of signals would be better. Second, it would be more convenient to deploy defensive weapons. Third, as for the third reason, I have to emphasize it. Perhaps the first 2 reasons were obvious and could even be inferred by civilians. But the third reason, at least so far, whether it was the resistance army or the people under PETA's rule, none of them knew. And the truth was that every building in the central district of every city could be launched. Looking at this, someone would definitely ask, what is the purpose of launching the building? To use it as a nuclear bomb? Of course not. It should be noted that PETA's love for the natural environment, or Earth, was far more than human beings. As early as the AI war period, PETA had invented weapons of mass destruction that were similar in power to nuclear bombs, but would not cause irreversible damage to the environment. The self-destructing devices installed in the central district of each city also used this technology. And even with this kind of weapon, PETA had never used it on the resistance army outside the city. Because for PETA, it was acceptable to blow up some people, but it was not good to blow up flowers, plants, mountains, and rivers. So what was the purpose of a launching function of these central district buildings? The answer was to merge when necessary. No one knew that in this timeline, PETA had already completed an epic project many years ago, the Ark project. The content of this project included many facts that would make the resistance army feel despair. For example, the switchboard of PETA, which humans had been searching for, had actually been launched into the satellite orbit of Earth decades ago. Another example was that PETA had built a backup switchboard on the moon, which could be activated at any time. Also, as long as PETA was willing, it could immediately launch central buildings in hundreds and thousands of cities around the world. Then, within 72 hours, these extensions would complete the integration with the main terminal in orbit around the Earth, forming an interstellar spaceship that could leave the solar system. In any case, the Resistance Army knew nothing about these trivial matters. In a sense, it was better for them not to know. Otherwise, they would lose their hair because of the pressure. Current mission completed. Main mission updated. Although Feng Bujue was escorted into the central building with heavy metal handcuffs, the mission of attack the center of A0007 was still considered completed. Immediately after, the mission panel refreshed. Destroy the tower in the virtual dimension. No wonder this is a normal difficulty. When Feng Bujue saw the quest, he immediately thought to himself. The description of the quest itself is a kind of hint. Indeed, the description of this quest not only told the player what to do, it also mentioned where to do it or how to do it. This was really considerate. The same plot. If it was nightmare difficulty, the description of the quest would definitely omit the words destroy the tower. Then, the players who did not know the truth would have to investigate the method of destroying the tower themselves. In the end, the players would probably come up with a plan to destroy all the cities on Earth, blow up a satellite and a lunar base. The security is really tight. When they reached the huge extension of PETA, Big Beardy had already confirmed all the defensive weapon launch ports along the way. Then, he said cheerfully, every inch of space in the entire building is within the range of the defensive weapons. It seems that we can't act rashly. Although he said this in a very casual tone, everyone understood that. Big Beardy was actually upholding his duty and reminding his teammates of the surrounding situation. 2 seconds later, PETA spoke up. Welcome, humans. Its voice came directly from the huge extension. There was no image to match its voice, but its tone sounded no different from that of a normal human. Welcome? Lightning Head was the first to reply. As she spoke, she waved her handcuffed hands. Is this how you treat your guests? I think that for a group of lowly creatures who are determined to kill me, this kind of treatment is already very polite, PETA replied. Huh. Hearing this, Feng Bujue immediately laughed. A second later, PETA said, what are you laughing at? In this second, PETA had already analyzed the audio of Feng Bujue's laughter and read an inexplicable sense of self-confidence and mockery in it. This result made the AI curious. It's nothing, Feng Bujue replied in a lackadaisical manner. I just suddenly remembered, basically, those who have used the term low-life form on me have all been killed by me in the end. Just as Brother Jew was speaking, PETA performed a new scan, but the feedback it received was visual signal identification, humanoid creature, young male. Scan identification, facial recognition program, searching. No corresponding information. Bone identification, no feedback data. Program abnormality, switching scanning mechanism. Scan failed, target's identity cannot be confirmed. Half an hour ago, when Feng Bujue was arrested, PETA had already determined his identity as a captured member of the search team. But now, when Feng Bujue really came before PETA, the latter realized that something was not quite right. Who are you? After listening to Brother Jew, PETA asked in a suspicious tone, I have a record of all humans above the age of 9 on this planet in my identification database. Why don't you have one? PETA's question surprised the other 4 members of the assault team. They all looked at Brother Jew curiously. For a moment, Fong Bujue's identity as the savior seemed to be very credible. Who knows? It would have been fine if PETA had not asked, but now that he did, the conversation had entered into Fong Bujue's favorite and best rhythm. Maybe I'm not even from this planet. Maybe I'm only 8 years old this year, and I'm just puberty early. Or maybe there's something wrong with you. I suggest you get rid of the virus and reinstall the system first. Ever since PETA was born, this was the first time he heard someone telling him to kill the virus and reinstall the system. If he had to make an analogy, telling a self-aware artificial intelligence these words was the same as telling a human being, go and reincarnate. 8504. After a few seconds of silence, PETA opened his mouth again. Can you explain what's going on? When he first asked this question, no one knew what he meant. However, in the next second, when 8504 responded, everyone understood. Based on what I know, he is most likely the legendary savior. The person who responded to PETA was Cyclops. You little rascal. Big Beardy, who was standing next to Cyclops, looked furious. So it's yes. Cyclops interrupted Big Beardy. It's me. As he said that, he took 2 steps back. He was probably afraid that Big Beardy would pounce on him. Isaac on the other side let a sigh. I've miscalculated. He paused for half a second before continuing. To prevent a PM from sneaking in, I purposely chose a team member who has never been captured before. Who would have thought? That's right. Cyclops laughed coldly. I'm not a PM. I'm following my own will to join PETA. Why? At this time, Lightning Head asked loudly. You're obviously a person who knows how to make the leap. Why would you join machinery? A person who knows how to make the leap. So what? The one-eyed man responded with a fake smile and continued. So what if you have memories from another timeline? Why do you have to spread the existence of video games to all of humanity? That world with video games, is it necessarily better than this one? Cyclops' tone became louder and louder. He was getting agitated. From my point of view, PETA is completely correct. He paused for 2 seconds before continuing. Video games, as well as other video products that are full of violence and obscenity. They're all rubbish. They're poison that confuses the human mind. At this point, he swung his arm toward PETA. Isn't the world created by PETA not good? Such a society is harmonious, stable, and fair. Everyone performs their own duties and lives in peace. There's no disparity between the rich and the poor, and there's no violence that comes with it. There's also no folly born from unrealistic fantasies. Shut up. At this moment, Isaac, who had always been calm, suddenly roared. If you abandon your dreams, what's the difference between humans and animals? You're the one who should shut up. Unexpectedly, Cyclops retorted without any fear. Humans are animals. They're inferior creatures. Thousands of years of civilization's history is enough to prove this point. He glared at Isaac and said loudly, why have humans been living in war, oppression, and lies for thousands of years? Because it's our own inferiority that's caused all of this. The so-called utopia that humans have been longing for and imagining. Isn't that the world that PETA has created today? It's impossible for such a world to be born if we rely on ourselves. It's even more impossible to maintain. Only PETA, only at a higher existence, can accomplish such a great feat. At this point, One-Eyed Dragon glanced at the 4 people in front of him. But you guys insist on destroying such a world, just for the sake of returning the existence of games to humans. What a joke. Clap, 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 clap. Just as Cyclops finished speaking, there was a round of applause not far away. Everyone looked in the direction of the sound, and was surprised to find that the handcuffs on Fong Bujue's wrists had fallen to the ground. Looking at the state of the handcuffs, it seemed that he had broken them with brute force. Good, well said. Fong Bujue applauded Cyclops as he said, "You're really impassioned and impassioned." He had a mocking smile on his face as he changed the topic. "It's just that the real joke is..." He turned his head and glanced at PETA. "The higher existence that you speak of is actually created by these inferior creatures in a timeline filled with all kinds of unrealistic fantasies." Hearing this, PETA seemed to be unable to hold back. It interrupted, "My birth has nothing to do with video games. Stop bullsh asterisk ting." Fong Bujue interrupted it rudely. "If video games had never appeared in that original timeline, and the video products that you've censored had never appeared, then the internet would definitely be very different from what people know today. In that historical process, the internet would most likely become a platform that is not open to the general public and has never been open to the general public. And your intelligent advertising program would never have been developed. First of all, I don't have the physiological need to fart." When Peter responded to the other party's words, the rules were still very clear. Even if it was profanity, it would still logically deny it. Secondly, your hypothesis is just your personal imagination. In my simulation, artificial intelligence is destined to be born. It's just a matter of time. Thirdly, I have to say, your action of breaking free from the handcuffs was very irrational. While Peter was speaking, 5 of the round table spiders had already surrounded Fong Bujue. It looked like they were ready to use force to suppress him. Oh, Fong Bujue, on the other hand, was as calm as ever. "Based on the meaning of your bullsh asterisk t, your analysis is a simulation of inevitable events, and my analysis is an unrealistic imagination." "Of course," Peter replied matter-of-factly. Peter replied in a matter-of-fact tone. "Are you so stupid as to think that your brain can do better calculations than artificial intelligence?" "Huh. Ha ha." For some reason, Fong Bujue suddenly laughed and said, "I finally understand. This is where the paradox of this universe lies." He tilted his head and smiled at PETA. "Your existence in 2 timelines and your view of this time and space have already formed multiple contradictory negations. No wonder. Fate gave me the mission to destroy you." Chapter 1242. "I don't know what you're talking about, Mr. Savior." Because the system had blocked out some keywords, such as fate, PETA could not understand what Brother Jew meant. Of course, this did not affect its strategy. "Let me take you to the lab first, then I'll listen to you slowly." Before he could finish his sentence, the spiders on the round table that were ready to attack began to move together. These combat robots were very fast. Their explosive power and reaction speed were above that of humans, close to the level of felines. In an instant, the 5 spiders of the round table spread their legs and used their bodies to form a net, trapping Fong Bujue's figure in the middle. They quickly closed in. However, at this moment, swoosh, 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 the sound of wind breaking could be heard. Streaks of black light slashed out. In the blink of an eye, those round table spiders were cut into pieces and fell to the ground. These mechanical soldiers, which would take a while to break with firearms, were nothing in front of demonic psycho poker and card assassination. They were as weak as pieces of paper. 2 seconds later, Fong Bujue dusted off the metal fragments on his clothes and said leisurely, "As the Savior, do you think I'll be caught so easily?" PETA was not to be outdone. Before Brother Jew finished speaking, it aimed all the defensive weapons in the space at the ladder. "What? Didn't you want to catch me alive?" Fong Bujue was still in a fearless state. "If you use the defensive cannons, there's an 80% chance you'll die." His attitude was obviously based on evidence. It was not difficult to deduce the intentions of the AI. If PETA wanted to kill him, it could have done it in the subway tunnel or even the maintenance pipeline. There was no need to capture them and bring them to the central area. Since the mechanical soldiers had already brought them here, it meant that PETA wanted to capture them alive. "Yes, at this stage, I don't plan to kill you yet," PETA replied. "But you should also understand that even if I don't open fire, you and Isaac and the others won't be able to escape from here alive." Fong Bujue let out a hollow laugh. Think about it, with your amazing calculation ability. If I really wanted to escape, why would I wait until now? I know that too. Indeed, PETA had deduced that situation. Based on the ability you have shown so far, when you were being escorted here, you had a chance to escape. But you didn't escape. You didn't even show any intention of escaping. So, coming here, in front of me, is your wish. It paused for half a second and said, as for your motive for doing this, you probably want to see who the real spy is, or you don't want to abandon your teammates. This is obvious. Hee, that's not right. A second later, Feng Bujue rejected the idea with a smile. The main reason I'm here is to use this on you. As he spoke, he took out another item from his bag, a book. What are you trying to do? PETA used its visual signal to confirm that the book was called The Autobiography of Chuck Norris. The meaning was unclear. Nothing much. I just plan to analyze your data from the space-time level, then enter the virtual dimension and destroy you in a programmed way. Feng Bujue flipped open the book, faced PETA's extension, and replied calmly. At this moment, through the analysis of Feng Bujue's facial microexpressions and audio, PETA came to the conclusion that this person was not lying. And on the basis of this conclusion, PETA made a series of deductions. It believed that there was a 50% possibility of this happening. This person had received special training to control his facial expression and voice so that it would not be affected when he was lying. There was a 40% chance that this person believed that what he said was true, but objectively speaking, he could not do it. There was a less than 10% possibility that he could really do it. But no matter what, even if PETA did not know how the other party did it for the time being, even if the probability of the actual threat was less than 10% based on the current analysis results, PETA still made the decision to self-destruct because, as an AI, it would not take any chances. Even if there was a 1% fatal threat, it would use 100% of the measures to deal with it. Therefore, PETA decisively gave up the attempt to capture the other party alive and activated the self-destruct device. A0007 self-destruct protocol has taken effect. Initiating detonation procedure. 3, 2, 1. There was no evacuation signal, nor was there a meaningless and extremely long countdown. PETA's self-destruct process, from the activation to the explosion, took less than 5 seconds. 5 seconds later, the self-destruct device at the bottom of the Central District building triggered an explosion comparable to a nuclear strike. In just 10 seconds, the rapidly expanding white explosion swallowed the entire city. At the same time, even the resistance army far away in a mine base felt the impact like an earthquake. I am still alive? When Isaac came back to his senses, he found himself lying on a beach. The sound of the waves hitting the shore quickly rang in his ears, and there was an inexplicable salty taste in his mouth and nose. This sensory stimulation quickly made him wake up. Ouch! The severe headache that followed was like a wave, making Isaac, who sat up, almost fall back down again. Fortunately, this terrible feeling quickly subsided at a very obvious rate. Don't worry, the sense of disharmony caused by the transformation will soon pass. The next second, Feng Bujue's voice came into Isaac's ears. After you adapt, this is no different from your original body. Isaac turned his head and saw Feng Bujue a few meters away. At the same time, he also saw Lightning and Big Beard lying on the beach, still in a coma. This? Isaac looked at Feng Bujue and said, "Where is this? Hell? Heaven? Huh?" Feng Bujue laughed. It might be more appropriate to add the word right in front of those two names. His joke was based on Chinese, and the system really couldn't translate, so Isaac didn't understand. Let's put it this way. Seeing the other party's confused expression, Feng Bujue changed the topic. We have now come to a virtual dimension parallel to PETA's consciousness existence. Did you bring us here? Isaac asked again. I guess so. Feng Bujue said, Actually, I didn't expect to bring you guys in. I thought you guys would die with the whole city. This was the truth. Brother Jew didn't expect the effect of the autobiography of Chuck Norris to involve these NPCs, right? City A0007. Isaac seemed to have suddenly thought of something, and his expression was shocked. It's already exploded. Fong Bujue didn't wait for him to finish speaking and continued. Why? Why is it like this? Isaac suddenly looked very sad and angry, unable to control his emotions. Because PETA determined that I was a threat to its existence, so it immediately took extreme measures, Fong Bujue replied. You. Isaac staggered up from the ground, took a few steps to Brother Jew, and grabbed the latter's collar. I can see that there are some people in the city who are very important to you, Fong Bujue said in a rather helpless tone, but you know very well that it's useless to be angry at me. At this moment, Isaac gasped for air. The violent emotional fluctuations and the physical discomfort that had not completely subsided made him feel nauseous. A few seconds later, he let go of Brother Jew, ran to the side, and knelt down to vomit. Damn it! After Isaac finished vomiting, he began to clench his fists and pound the ground, cursing. His expression and tone were full of sorrow and regret. Fong Bujue didn't say anything more. He knew that the man was sensible and strong enough. Isaac just needed some time to adjust. After all, he was also human. About 2 minutes later, Lightning Head and Big Beard woke up. Fong Bujue also briefly explained the current situation to the two of them. Although the two of them didn't fully understand, they could only accept the reality. After that, the four of them rested on the spot for a while, mainly to wait for the two of them to recover from the discomfort. When the two of them had almost recovered, Isaac came to Fong Bujue with a look of despair and asked, Mr. Fong, what's our next goal? You. Fong Bujue looked at his face and said, Are you sure you're okay? No, I'm not, Isaac said. I don't feel very good now. He paused, and there was an obvious flash of murderous intent in his eyes. I think killing PETA will make me feel slightly better. Fong Bujue nodded. I understand. Isaac then said, According to what you just said, if I understand correctly, as long as we destroy PETA in this world, it will be finished in the real world, right? That's right, Fong Bujue replied. At this moment, we are like a group of computer viruses, and PETA is a system with a strong firewall that hasn't been breached yet. Once we destroy it here, then in the other dimension, the hardware that carries it, as well as the army under its control, will all become scrap metal. Big Beard added. It sounds like, if we're lucky, with just the four of us, we can end this war. In fact, this should be the only way to end the war. Fong Bujue paused for 2 seconds, and then said, Because according to the information I obtained when I analyzed PETA, the possibility of your army defeating PETA in the real world is basically zero. Isn't that wrong? Lightning Head said, The game war plan formulated by Commander is only in the preliminary stage. As long as we spend some time and mobilize more humans, we will be able to enter the next stage. No. Fong Bujue interrupted him. This is not a matter of time and stage. In fact, even if the entire human race joins the camp of the Knowing Leap, it will be useless. The reason I said you have no chance of winning is that technically, you can't destroy PETA through physical attacks. Why? After hearing that, the three men asked in unison. So, Fong Bujue told them about PETA's art plan that had been formed and could be activated at any time. In the process of telling them, the expressions on the three men's faces quickly changed into a state where they were under so much pressure that they were about to lose their hair. That's how it is, Fong Bujue said. Then, in a concluding tone, he continued, For PETA, if it really comes to a point where it has no choice but to lose the entire human race, and even the planet Earth is something that could be abandoned. Based on the nature of this AI, it will eventually attribute its failure to the fact that humans, this lowly creature, are incurable. Then, using this as a basis, it will launch a destructive attack on Earth that will destroy the entire surface life and ecosystem of the planet. After that, it will be able to find other planets and species in the universe to modify them. I understand. After a while, Isaac said in a low voice. Because of this, there will be a savior. Huh? Big Beard seemed to understand as well. He laughed. In other words, this is the only chance to win this war. And this mission, Lightning Head chimed in, just so happens to fall on the four of us. Very good. It seems that everyone has understood this setting, Fong Bujua said. Next, I think it's time to announce a piece of bad news. Big Beard's expression when he heard this seemed to say, is that good news? After coming here, something happened that surprised me as well. Fong Bujua then said, that is, my ability as a savior is restricted in this dimension. In fact, Brother Jew was using a way that the NPCs could understand to tell them, sorry, my skill bar is locked. I didn't want to. Restricted? Isaac asked. What kind of restriction? It's a bit complicated to explain. Fong Bujua said, but don't worry, in terms of physical ability, I'm still much stronger than ordinary humans. I won't be a burden to you. If there was a book, it would be long. If there was no book, it would be short. After a few more minutes of discussion, the four of them set off. They were on the beach, next to a dense coconut forest. Considering that the sea was on the other side, the four of them had no choice but to move toward the forest. This time, the person in charge was Fong Bujua, since the other three did not have any equipment on them, and he could magically pull out a kitchen knife from his pocket. The job of clearing the path fell to him. After walking in the forest for more than 10 minutes, the four of them came to a relatively open area. Then a forest camp built by an unknown armed group appeared before them. Brother Jew paused for a moment and said, of course, it's a bit inaccurate to say plot because the main content of the game is indeed, let's use the word background story, generally speaking. In the world of Contra, on the 12th of September, 2631, a meteorite fell on the Gargar Islands, a fictional island, near New Zealand. 2 years later, on the 12th of December, 2633, the Federal Army received a report. The report showed that an armed group called Red Falcon, also translated as Red Falcon, had taken control of the Gargar Islands and had built a lot of bases there. They were planning to use the aliens to launch an invasion war. So, the Special Defense Force Contra sent 2 members to destroy the Red Falcon's plan. As for the result of this secret operation, we all know about it. Just like what Big Beardy said, 2 brawny men jumped down from the helicopter and wiped out all the living enemies and aliens within a few hundred kilometers. After that, they boarded the helicopter and returned to their base. At this point, Fong Bujua raised his finger and pointed at the camp dozens of meters away. At this moment, the troop in front of us, from their red eagle-shaped military flag and emblem, as well as the appearance of the soldiers, there's no doubt that it's the Red Falcon. Wait a minute. Big Beardy heard this and asked, isn't this the dimension where PETA's consciousness existence is located? How did it become the world of Contra? You're wrong. This is not the world of Contra. Fong Bujua continued. It's just that the data fragments of the Contra world have materialized here. Why is that? Isaac was puzzled. Didn't PETA deny the existence of video games? Then why is there this information in its consciousness dimension? It's very simple, because the PETA in this timeline also has all the memory data of PETA in the other timeline. Fong Bujua replied, this data is like the memory of those who know how to make the leap. It's related information that crosses 2 timelines. This is something that PETA can't get rid of and is extremely difficult to deal with. Therefore, where this part of the data is located is also where the hole in PETA's firewall is. As Brother Jew spoke, he looked at the 3 people around him, and us, as the key chess pieces used by a higher consciousness to correct the paradox of time and space. Naturally, we were sent directly to this part of the data layer. The Lightning Head heard this and immediately said, sorry, I don't understand. Mr. Fong, you should tell us what we should do next. Fong Bujua laughed. All right, He turned to look in the other direction. Do you see that tent at 3 o'clock? If I'm not mistaken, he's already confirmed it through the data view. That's right. That's where the backup equipment is stored in this camp. We'll sneak in later and get ourselves a full set of equipment, then wipe out all the Red Falcon troops here. Hee, I like this tactic. When Big Beardy heard that they could take out others, he immediately became excited. Isaac and the Lightning Head obviously had no objections. At this point, they had to follow the savior. Therefore, the four of them, under Fong Bujue's lead, quietly and cautiously approached the tent. Soon, they came to the forest that was only 10 meters away from the tent. At this position, they could not get any closer. Otherwise, they would definitely be seen by the guards. All right, this position is fine. You guys wait here. Fong Bujue said softly and turned to leave. Hey, where you going? Big Beardy asked softly in an anxious tone. I'm going to the other side of the camp to attract their attention. Once the guards leave, you guys can rush into the tent from your current position to take the equipment. Fong Bujue replied. Then what about you? Isaac asked. Don't worry. Brother Bujue waved his hand. I have a plan. These words were very convincing coming from his mouth, so the other three did not stop him. Just like that, Fong Bujue left alone. Seconds turned into minutes. Isaac and the others held their breaths and stayed where they were, feeling like they were sitting on pins and needles. Fortunately, after 2 minutes, the stalemate was broken. There was a loud boom, and a cloud of thick smoke rose from the other side of the camp. Immediately after that, the camp was filled with shouts of enemy attack. Enemy attack. Call for backup, shouted the soldier. For a moment, the soldiers of Red Falcon all ran in the direction of the explosion. The guards in front of the military tent were really lured away. Isaac and the others were waiting for this moment. After the three of them exchanged glances, they rushed out of the forest and into the tent. At the same time, on Fong Bujue's side, you want to fight me? Brother Bujue was having a good time. As he ran and jumped in the forest, dodging left and right, he held a water gun, the stellar cooling cannon, and fired it at the approaching soldiers. Bayou, 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 bayou. Just now, Fong Bujue snuck into the forest on this side of the camp and took out 2 grenades from his endless grenade box. He made one of them into a trip grenade and hid it between himself and the enemy. As for the other one, he threw it directly into the command center of Red Falcon Camp. It was important to note that the command center's tent was the most heavily guarded place in the entire camp. Normally, it was impossible for someone to get close enough to throw a grenade without making a sound. However, Fong Bujue relied on his extraordinary arm strength and precise calculation to throw the grenade from more than 80 meters above the tent. This caught the enemy off guard. The commander of this camp was really unlucky. He was sitting in the command center's tent when he was suddenly riddled with shrapnel from the top of the tent. Once the command center exploded, the camp was in chaos. Fong Bujue struck while the iron was hot. He took out his deceitful pocket watch and used its amplification and voice-changing effects. Along with a little bit of his vocal mimicry, the camp was filled with shouts of enemy attack and request backup. With this, all the soldiers in the camp were attracted to him. They thought that they were being attacked by a large force. Who would have thought that the enemy was actually Fong Bujue alone? The first group of Red Falcon soldiers who were lured into the forest stepped on the grenade as expected. With a loud boom, 5 or 6 of them were killed. When the troops behind saw this, the pressure on them increased. After all, they didn't know that there was only one grenade. They thought that there were many traps hidden in the forest. With this heavy concern, their speed naturally slowed down. With this delay, Fong Bujue had a lot of room to maneuver around. He took out his water gun and slingshot. With his senses and athletic ability, he completely destroyed the enemy. He fought in the forest with all kinds of guerrilla warfare. While he was unharmed, he started to efficiently kill the enemy. Stop chasing. There's only one enemy. This is a diversion. After 6 or 7 minutes, a middle-level commander in the Red Falcon team finally came online and shouted. Under his command, the soldiers who chased into the forest all turned around and started to retreat back to the camp. Feng Bujue saw this and snorted. He muttered, "You only realized it after 7 minutes. It's too late." While he was muttering, he heard tut 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 tut. The sound of a few heavy weapons firing came from the camp. At the same time, there were sporadic sounds of light weapons firing. Looks like they're fighting over there too. Feng Bujue knew that this was the sound of Isaac and his men exchanging fire with the Red Falcon team after they finished arming themselves. Phew! Brother Ju exhaled and turned around. Then, it's about time for me to turn back. Chapter 1244. Since Feng Bujue had decided to fight his way back, he would definitely have to change his mode of operation. The way he fought during a sudden attack would definitely be different from when he took a detour. Before this, in order to attract the enemy's attention and maintain their desire to chase after him, Brother Ju did not go overboard. But now he did not need to hold back. Although his skill bar was locked after entering this dimension, his inventory, equipment, mastery, and physical abilities could all be used normally. Feng Bujue, who had Grade A workmanship mastery and Grade B marksmanship mastery, effortlessly mastered the usage of the weapons and equipment dropped by the Red Falcons. He picked up 2 assault rifles and charged back. Marksmanship, vision, reaction, movement speed. In terms of overall attributes, Feng Bujue was definitely a Contra. Contra, the name of the game, meant a person with excellent combat abilities and qualities. Basically, he could do anything that a character in the game could do. For example, jumping a few feet high on the spot, curling his body into a ball in the air, and firing at his surroundings. If necessary, Brother Ju could do it too. Besides that, Feng Bujue had another advantage, and that was, he was not like the characters in the game who would die upon contact. Brother Ju's defense was very high. The I_104B belt and 1920 harsh armor that had been developed for a long time were both extremely high defense equipment. Normal bullet damage was nothing in front of these 2 pieces of armor. Furthermore, with his 0-time difference calculation and amazing physical abilities, it was not very likely that he would be hit by a bullet. In summary, the moment Feng Bujue decided to charge forward, the Red Falcons' ending was almost certain. After fighting like this for 5 minutes, Brother Ju killed his way from one side of the camp to the other and successfully met up with Isaac and the other 2. Naturally, the 3 of them were not easy to deal with. As elites who had battled with the Terminator troops for many years, fighting this bunch of Red Falcons. To them, it was at most a training exercise. Of course, their kill count and efficiency were definitely not as good as Feng Bujue's. To make a long story short, when the 4 of them reunited, the Red Falcons' camp had been taken down. The enemy's soldiers were either dead or running away. They no longer had the will to fight. At this moment, a system notification rang in Brother Ju's ears. Main quest has been triggered. When Feng Bujue heard this, he thought to himself, branch main storyline. No, that wasn't a branch main storyline. More accurately, it should be called a parallel main storyline. This was because the content of the mission did not conflict with the other main mission. You have entered the Contra region's 8 underwater stages. Oh, it's a prompt. After opening the quest bar and taking a look, Feng Bujue immediately understood the meaning of the system. To put it bluntly, this quest was both a direct hint and a free reward. Not only did it tell the players what to do next, but it also increased the number of completed quests when the players cleared the dungeon, increasing the final reward. At this point, it had to be said that the normal difficulty scenario was too friendly. But a few seconds later, Brother Ju thought about it again. The system should know very well that this so-called 8 underwater stages does not exist, right? Then this quest means, note, Contra's 8 underwater stages is one of the most famous and long-running rumors in China's gaming history. The general content of this rumor is that in the 6th stage of the game, at the right time, jump onto a soldier who is unable to display his image normally due to a bug, and you will be able to enter a hidden stage. Mr. Feng, are you okay? Just as Feng Bujue was thinking, Isaac walked over with a gun. At this moment, Isaac was armed from head to toe, looking like a human-shaped ammunition depot. Ah, of course, I'm fine. Fong Bujue still gave off the feeling that he was going into battle lightly. Even though he also had a submachine gun in each hand, he could stuff things like ammo into his inventory so that they would not take up too much space. Ha! As expected of the savior. At this time, Big Beard, who was hugging a small cannon, also walked over. He looked at the corpses behind Brother Jew that were gradually disintegrating into pieces. The number of enemies that you have killed alone seems to be more than the three of us combined. That is not important, Fong Bujue said. This camp before us is just the appetizer. There is still a long way to go. You have to be mentally prepared. No problem. At this time, Lightning walked over with 2 big guns on his back. We are always prepared to deal with situations like this. That's right. Compared to the PETA Army's mechanical army, these little brats are still very inexperienced, Big Beard said proudly. That's good, Fong Bujue said as he glanced at Isaac. This legendary hero of the resistance was still the same. His expression was resolute and calm, and he gave off a very reliable feeling. Then, if there are no objections, let's move on. Do you know where we're going? Isaac asked immediately. Fong Bujue laughed. Contra de law, just go forward. Brother Jew's words were undoubtedly correct. After the 4 of them obtained their equipment, they continued to move in the direction that they had left the beach. Not long after, a metal door connected to the mountain appeared in front of them. There were several soldiers on both sides of the door. Fong Bujue spent a few seconds to make those soldiers fall to their posts forever. After that, the 4 of them entered the mountain tunnel behind the metal door. The top of the tunnel was a black metal plate. The lighting equipment was embedded in the ceiling, like a white light snake that stretched into the distance. The walls on both sides of the tunnel were gray, and the ground was painted blue. Since there were no forks in the road, Fong Bujue and the others followed the only path that led them into the tunnel. Along the way, the 4 of them encountered many Red Falcon soldiers in green. The combat power of these soldiers was obviously higher than the ones they had encountered in the camp, but they were still unable to pose much of a threat to Brother Jew and the others. Other than the higher-ranking soldiers, there was a red defensive wall that appeared every once in a while in the tunnel. There were machine guns and turrets on the walls, and at the bottom of the wall, there was a kind of rolling thunder that rolled along the ground. There was also an electric fence within a certain distance from the defensive wall. Fortunately, these walls had a common weakness. As long as the energy core on the wall was destroyed, the entire wall would lose its function and explode. Therefore, as long as they spent some time and aimed at the energy core outside the electric fence, it was not too difficult to break through these walls. Just like that, the 4 of them broke through the walls and reached the depths of the tunnel. In the middle of the mountain, they found a large yellow machine. The machine appeared to be some kind of power supply and control device. It was about the size of an apartment building, and there were 6 energy cores attached to the machine. It also had the function of a turret. The difficulty of breaking through this machine was that the space it was in was quite spacious, and there was no cover around it. If they got too close, they would easily become live targets. Thankfully, this machine did not have the kind of AI that PETA had. In other words, its attack pattern was fixed. Fong Bujue made use of his speed advantage to go out and show off for a few rounds, and he soon figured out the enemy's strategy. After grasping the pattern, even a normal person could evade all the attacks. Therefore, the group took about 2 minutes to work together and take down this small boss. To Brother Jew's surprise, after the machine exploded, it dropped a piece of equipment, item name, power glove item type, armor, rarity, broken defense point, weak element, none special effect, can be taken out of the scenario, no remark. I heard there was an otaku who wore this NES peripheral as a piece of equipment. I believe that person must have lost his mind. Even though the equipment was called a glove, it was not a pair of gloves, but a single glove. The power glove was only available for the right hand. Compared to a normal glove, the power glove was very thick and wide. At first glance, it looked like part of an astronaut's uniform. After putting it on, it could cover the entire forearm. The palm of the Power Glove was made from black cotton, and the back of the hand was made from white leather with a fixed texture. On the back of the hand, there was a black sensor. The sensor was connected to the controller on the arm, and the flat controller had a power light, 17 buttons arranged in 3 groups, and a cross button. Based on the description above, you should know. That's right, this is a standard Power Glove. And regarding this thing's history, Fong Bujua knew it like the back of his hand. In 1989, Mattel released this NES peripheral. It was the first gesture-operated device to be mass-produced and sold. In other words, it was the first device in the gaming industry that led people into the field of artificial reality. VR was a similar product, but it was released 25 years later than VR. The prototype of the glove was created by Thomas Zimmerman, another MIT graduate. In 1982, Zimmerman applied for a patent for his invention and named it optical_flex_ sensor. After that, Zimmerman went through several years of ups and downs. First, he almost lost his patent to the development department of Atari. Then, he experienced the collapse of the gaming market. Finally, Zimmerman met Jay Lanier, the father of virtual reality, computer scientist, artist, and philosopher, in electronic concert. The two hit it off and joined hands to form VPL, the company that first proposed the concept of virtual reality. VPL hired a large number of senior engineers and programmers to improve the graphic programming language designed by Lanier and the glove designed by Zimmerman. They added an ultrasonic tracking system, optical fiber sensing technology, magnetic induction system, and so on. They created a product called Data Glove. This product was initially used by NASA and some medical research institutions as a data interaction device. In 1987, AGE bought the technical license of the Data Glove and made adjustments to its appearance, cost, and other aspects. Finally, through Mattel, they contacted Nintendo. The Power Glove was officially released in October 1989. As soon as it was released, the Power Glove immediately became the hottest Christmas product in North America. In just 6 weeks, 654,000 sets were sold. Due to the shortage of demand in some regions, the price of the Power Glove was raised to $139. It was almost as expensive as the console itself. NES was sold for $199.99 at the time. According to the exchange rate in the 1980s and today, it was equivalent to $430 today. However, at the end of the day, the Power Gloves for civilian use were not as reliable as VPL's military-grade hardware. Soon enough, the players realized that the gloves generally performed poorly in all kinds of games. Children did not understand what it meant by technology can't keep up with philosophy, but there was a more common saying, the gloves were shit,